it from Tuesday to a Monday, which got some schedules out of whack with it. So again, appreciate that. So Catherine, I tend to default to you to run as we move ahead. Do you have the agenda handy as we go through? Whack with it. So again, appreciate that. So Catherine, I tend to default to you to run as we move ahead. Do you have the agenda handy as we go through? You're on mute, so you will need to unmute.
Yeah. Sam, you cut out there at the last minute. I didn't hear what you asked me.
It's asking if, since Margaret's not here yet, if you go ahead and just run the meeting and if start
Sure.
with the.
Okay, I can do that. It looks like our first agenda item is approval of the minutes. Is that correct? So if so, do any of the trustees have any comments or suggested changes to the prior minutes? Okay, can I have a motion to accept them as prepared?
I'll make a motion.
Anyone second?
Second.
All right, all those who approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as written. Next up is introduction of visitors. So are there any visitors? And I'm not present in the meeting, so it's difficult for me to see. Sam, can you let me know?
We have some visitors here.
Our first visitor will be Lisa Knight. She's on the Zoom call.
Well, but we've just general who we've got in the back here. So Stacy, do you want to introduce two of the visitors? They'll come in later, but just.
Today with us, I don't know, this feels a little weird. I don't know if anyone can see us, but they'll be introduced as well later. But we have Scott Prepper now and Gary Deeth from Milliman here today to present to the board.
And Dell Stevens is here, retired. Do you want to say anything else for yourself here, Dell, before you come up and speak?
I'll save it for a one shot here.
Okay, good. Lauren?
Lauren Downhauer, outside legal counsel.
Okay, there we go. And you'll be speaking here a little bit later too. And we also have, I think, I'm not seeing Franco on the list yet either. So, oh, there's Franco right there. So Franco here, our attorney's remote. Kim Mitchell, our disability manager, she's also remote. Like you heard from Stacy, she's here. I'm here in person. So there we go with the introductions.
Okay, and it sounds like we're up to public comment period, and we have somebody speaking, Lisa Knight. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Lisa, when you're ready, you can unmute yourself and talk.
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So real quick, I wanted to just go over how they changed in PERS at the state level in 2021. Language basically stating for same-sex marriage and how we can change it to FPDR, because as of right now it still says spouse, and even though federal level it is legal and they passed the Respect for Marriage Act, I want it changed for FPDR because I also had abortion rights for 50 years and that's taken away. So I just don't trust it to not go away. And if I die after I retire, I would really love it if my wife got my pension, which is what she's entitled to. So I looked up, I'm working with Representative Dacia Graber, who is also a Tualatin Valley firefighter. And I believe it's under the Senate Bill 111 in section 10-1A. That's all. I'm not a lawyer, so I could be wrong on this. But basically it says, let me find it again. It doesn't specify spouse necessarily. Shoot, let me find it. So it shall be paid to the beneficiaries designated under ORS 238.390. And then I went to that, and basically that specifies, and this is all for PERS, which I am not on because I'm FPDR, but for this purpose, a member may designate as a beneficiary any person or the executor or administrator of the estate of the member or a trustee named by the member to execute and express trust in the regard to such an amount, dealing with pension and whatnot. So that's basically my question is, how do we change that, and how can I be of help to change that if we can for FPDNR?
Okay, thank you. Any comment, Sam, that you want to make at this point? Or should we?
Oh, yes, I do. I got to push my unmute button. I apologize. Lisa, I want to thank you very much for showing this with us. I have a different provision in PERS that was passed in 2021 that I think is a little bit more pertinent to the language of what you have. And I'm going to read this one section. It's from ORS 238A.230. It specifically says, the death benefit to be paid under this section shall be paid for the life of the spouse, and under this section is the PERS death benefit, for the life of the spouse, former spouse, and the language they added was, or other person who is constitutionally required to be treated in the same manner as a spouse. I think that's a little more direct than the other one that you had, Lisa. So this is what they have for PERS statute with it. And a couple things here. I did talk with our attorneys and PERS about this. And PERS says right now, and we agree with that at FPDR, and so does the city attorneys, same-sex marriage is protected today under Oregon statutes, under federal statutes. So there's no issue at this point. I think the concern that people have is, should the Supreme Court overturn their prior decision on Obergefell, if I'm pronouncing that right, it's where they said the 14th Amendment protects same-sex marriages. Should the Supreme Court change that, the challenge becomes to what are they changing it to, how are they changing it, who does it impact? Does it impact at the state level or the federal level? We are an IRS 401A approved pension plan. We have to pay attention to what the IRS also says allows to do. And presently, the IRS recognizes same-sex marriage under their part of the IRS code. So the challenge we have, should the Supreme Court do this, we don't know what impact it's going to have in FPDR. We don't even know if the wording I read you will uphold or will be enough to hold it, because the argument here is it says constitutionally required. If the federal government says it's not constitutionally required, what does it do to this phrase? And I've spent some time with Franco Luchin on this, and we just don't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, because there's no cases that we're aware of that are working its way through the courts that are against same-sex marriage. And when it does hit the Supreme Court, which we think is maybe 2 or 3 years at the earliest, maybe, unless there's some emergency thing happens before then, and then we have to read what their decision is, and then that decisions are going to have to ripple down through to the IRS, and then ripple down through to Oregon. And it gets pretty crazy because Oregon still, in their constitution, even though it was overturned by a federal judge, still says man and woman is the definition of marriage. So all this gets really complicated depending on what the Supreme Court does, and we don't know what they're going to do or when they're going to do it. But we want to assure Lisa and I and everybody else in same-sex marriages that they are protected today under both state and federal statutes, and will continue to be so until the Supreme Court renders a decision, and we don't know when that's going to be. And we don't know what the decisions are going to be or the ramifications of that impact. So when I heard that Lisa and I wanted to talk about this, I did a lot of research on here. What is there we can do? How do we do it? Because right now we're saying spouse is fully protected. We just don't know what's going to happen at the Supreme Court level. So again, so Lisa, I'm not downplaying any of this. I understand your concern. There's a lot of our members that probably have the same concern. I just don't know, and neither does our attorney know, what we can do to preempt a Supreme Court decision, because we don't know what that Supreme Court decision is going to be. And
Okay.
And part of the challenge, and again, I feel like I'm being Mr. Negative for this, Lisa, and I really don't mean to be. But also, we'd have to look how we could change this. Would this require a charter change, or could we do an administrative rule change? So we can look at that. So I just leave that comment back to Lisa. If you want to talk some more, if anybody else, I'll turn it back over to Catherine.
I was just gonna say thank you for your time. I just wanted it to be known that this is a thing that could have very well happen and affect a lot of our members, and I just didn't know how to go about, I guess, making it solid to where I don't have to worry about it, but it does sound like I'm gonna have to always have it in the back of my mind if and when the Supreme Court decides to overturn same-sex marriage. So I guess we'll just wait.
Sam, just to confirm though, are you suggesting that the city attorney is at this point recommending that we do more due diligence around the charter and then see what we can or can't do to make the language more consistent with the Oregon statute that you just referenced?
If we want, I've already done some preliminary talking with the city attorney's office. If that is something you would like to do to see if there is any way, to bring language similar to this into FPDR, I can continue that discussion. I don't know if it has to be at a charter level. Obviously, that lends to a lot of complexity. If it can be done at the rule level, that's up to you to do it. So if you want to, I can just put that on the list, and I'll meet with Franco and other attorneys and see what we can do with this.
No, I think that makes a lot more sense because I don't see necessarily a downside to revising the language to be more consistent with state statute. So to the extent that the Supreme Court strikes or makes any changes in this space, at least the state statute would be updated, and that would impact the language here as well. But certainly I'll defer to the other trustees to see what their thoughts are.
I would agree. I'd like you to continue with your conversations with legal
Okay.
to see, I think the idea being, as I spoke to Lisa about this a little bit as well, and I did a little bit of reading, and I believe that the current charter language just refers back to the state language. And if we could just beef up, strengthen the charter language, I think that's something that would at least be helpful. It seems like it'd be helpful. It'd be something that would be, I think, appreciated. And if we could even make it stronger, that would be a gesture that would be probably well received.
Okay, take a look. So in order for me to get some direction on this, I just need a motion, so to speak, so we have the whole board giving us direction that you want me to work with city attorney's office and look into this language further and for the FPDR plan.
Sure, a motion that we.
And I'll have to leave if Catherine, I'm jumping into your purview of doing it.
No, I appreciate that. I was wondering if we needed that as well, so I'll,
Yeah.
entertain a motion.
So I motion that we speak with the city attorney further for guidance to see if we can make the language in the charter more consistent with the state statute and what we would need to consider before making the change, in our charter.
And second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll work on that, and then I'll work with Chair Carter to determine when's a good time to bring it up to you all. It'll take us a little bit of time, so I don't know if we'll have it ready by March, but we'll see if it maybe give you an update at that point. But we'll go from there. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Lisa,
Thank you.
thank you very much for bringing this forward to us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for listening. I appreciate all of you all, and thanks again.
All right, I think that brings us to in-person public comments and Mr. Stevens.
Del, you're up.
Thank you for coming today, Mr. Stevens. So the way that this will work is you have 3 minutes for public comment, and there'll be a timer there that you can watch, and then you'll hear a beep when you have 1 minute left.
I'd like to start out by saying the acoustics in here are not receptive for people hearing what's being testified. And I missed almost everything that was said. I'll try to watch the video later, but I might have, wanted to respond if I could have heard it in progress.
Del, just a minute. There you go.
Oh, is that better? Can you hear me
Yes.
better? I hope so.
Definitely.
Well, I'd like to start out by saying that I was a Portland firefighter for 35 years. and I cared very much about the city and its functioning and its employees and their benefits. I became active because I knew that our original pension system, it was called the old plan, was inadequate. It didn't meet the needs of the members and did not meet the needs of the members' widows later on. In 1989, we started a process of pension reform. That's a long time ago now. And probably a lot of the people that are here now were hired after that. So I guess I'm a link with the past. But I would tell you that I've tried to stay current and I've tried to stay involved because there's issues of equity involved, and the city now is more concerned with equity than it ever has been, and I think you're all aware of that. We spent a year in that task force, on the mayor's task force, working on our pension, trying to arrive at a fair balance between the needs of the members and the obligation of the city. And it was quite a process. Lasted a year. At the end of that process, I was not satisfied that we had reached our goal. And the events later on has shown that to be true. At the time, we all voted to accept the task force recommendation, and I was the only one that objected to the fact that we had not reached the goal that was set for us. And I said, I will reluctantly vote for this, but I don't believe that it addresses the needs and the concerns of our people. Well, there's a number of people that I have stayed in touch with over the years, and I know that our disabled people and our retired people, you know, they have as much need for justice and for good benefits as the people working. And it's been neglected. It really has. I wish I could, you know, tell you all the experiences that I've had. I've had a lot. And I didn't want to get involved in a lot of technicalities today. I have 3 issues that I think need to be addressed. And I wanted to start out with by asking, I thought we had 5 trustees on the pension board, and I thought a quorum was 3. And I see you're voting on issues that probably should be held over.
They're here remotely.
Have Catherine McLeod here and Christopher Culp, they're both remote.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you, Sam. Okay. Well, I'm glad that we have representation. That's important. Okay. About 3 years ago, we had started a process of re-looking at the pension benefits we have as they're constituted now, and we had decided to form a committee. And I was still involved at that time. I'd been retired a long time, but I was still there. And we actually got to the point of putting people's names on the committee. And I don't know if anybody here remembers that, but it would appear to me that the committee idea has went away because of the COVID and the fact that we couldn't meet together personally. And so there's been no committee. And I would really like to start by saying the need is still there. That committee needs to be reauthorized. It needs to be constituted with people that are serious and committed to looking at improvements. And then we need to listen to the recommendations that come back from that committee. I'm getting old now, and I'm not maybe as sharp as I once was, but I've still got the motivation to see things like this through. And I know several people who are disabled that would like to serve on that committee. And that's one thing I want to do. The first thing here is I want to ask the pension board to reconstitute that committee and solicit informed and involved and caring people to be on that committee, from the fire and the police department. Now, I don't know, do you two trustees represent the fire and police?
I represent fire,
You're fire?
yes.
Okay, and you're Mr. Kyle McLeod?
McLaury, yes.
Okay, and
Citizen trustee.
you're
I'm
a
a citizen
citizen?
trustee, yep.
Okay, so we don't have the police representative even on.
Also present is Christopher Culp, and he is the police trustee. And
Okay.
Catherine McLeod is also a citizen trustee. But unfortunately, you're out of time. So can we hear the other two issues that you brought up today? I think the first one we heard was that you wanted to reconstitute a committee. What were the other two issues?
Okay, the other two, and I'll try to be brief. Resolution 501, and this goes back several years, dealt with changing our disability system. And at that time, Mr. Hutchinson, and please don't think I'm being personal, because I'm not. I'm just trying to get the facts out, okay? We removed the language of disability retirement from our pension system. And I'll tell you, that was a mistake, because it's still in the state law, and I can read it to you. And I've got it right here. I'll just open up one of these packets, by the way. I prepared them for the trustees and for the civilian trustees, and also for the staff. I've got several other documents here that I was going to refer to. Okay, here's the state law, the current state law that the city is actually in violation of. The Public Employees Retirement Plan or plans must provide at least 80% of the actuarial present value of projected retirement benefits in each of the major categories of retirement benefits available under PERS, namely, a service retirement benefit, including post-retirement health care, and a disability retirement benefit, also including post-retirement health care. We don't have a disability retirement anymore. It's gone. And we've lost the benefits when that wording was taken.
Never has been a disability pension in the charter, ever,
We're
since
not
it
hearing you,
was
Sam.
redone with this. So therefore, we are cleaning up the rules to measure. I am trying. Is this mic not on? It is on. It's just, well, let me get up here and talk. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Okay, Resolution 501 was to clean up a rule that referred to a term disability pension. There has never been a disability pension in the charter since at least 1990. I don't think there was one before. So it was referring to a benefit that did not exist, so we had it removed from it, one administrative rule. It did not change practices, it did not change anything with that. So that was not a charter change, it was not a plan change, it was a cleanup of an administrative rule, so it complied with the charter. Now, the reference that he's making here, I think, is going toward the ETOB test, equal to or better than test. Right. We will have a meeting, Margaret Carter and I was discussing having an ETOB session at the next board meeting in March. At that point, I'm hoping I can get one of the actuaries that did the ETOB test for the PERS that did our test under that plan, and then also potentially if I can get a PERS representative that's an expert of the ETOB test. And just a real quick thing, the ETOB test is run and operated by PERS. It's not run and operated by FPDR. Only input we have to the ETOB test is to give them the data they want. So we're totally independent from it. So we will, next meeting, have them, if we can get some presenters here to talk about what the ETOB test is about, how it's run, how it meets all the state statutes and the administrative rules that apply to that test. Okay.
Thank you, Sam. And Mr. Stevens, if we could hear your third point, you are out of time, so I'd love to hear your third point, and then we do need to move on. Thank you, sir.
I
I just need to hear the third, you said you had three?
yes, I have one more, yeah.
Okay, so let's hear the third one.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Well, I've already read the state law, and that is still in effect. It hasn't been changed.
With respect to those 3
Okay,
points.
I'm going to pass out these documents that I brought with me, and one of them that I do want to point out, does Nancy Hartline still work for the pension board? No. Okay, well, she wrote a letter to the Board of Trustees, and this is about the tax reporting of our two service-connected death upon retirement benefit. And I researched that because the widows were paying taxes on their disability retirement, okay? And they found out that I was right. And they went through a process, they changed their administrative rules, and now the widows are receiving a tax-free benefit, just like the member was when he was off on disability, okay? So I'm just showing that there ought to be some credibility to this process, that people don't always do things right. And not that I'm saying that anybody deliberately has overlooked things, but it's happened, and I have a number of friends who are suffering now. Our economy in this country is in a state of flux, 9.5% inflation. People that are disabled and trying to make a life for themselves, along with the problems that come with old age, they're struggling now. And the pension board can address this. It's something that is within our power to do. And I really ask you from the bottom of my heart to think of these people that have given their lives to the city and are struggling now because their benefits have shrunken. Beyond that, that letter that I'm passing out, Nancy Hartline actually thanked me in the letter for addressing that issue and pointing it out. And I'm trying to do the same thing now. And I hope that you're going to follow through and establish a committee and let the committee address these issues and let them take them wherever it goes and find out what is fair and what is legal, because it's not legal now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. If you get me those packages, I'll be sure they get to the trustees.
Okay,
Thank you.
Very good. It's my understanding that the next comment is going to follow the first action item. Is that correct?
okay. So these would all be for trustees, and there's 6 copies there, I believe. Yeah, 6 copies. I hope that they'll all receive a copy and they can read. Oh, by the way, the City of Portland Fire and Police Disability Retirement Fund has a statement of values, and I'll just quote one statement out of there. The statement of value is, "We are committed to diversity and equity in all areas of our operation." Thank you.
Thank you. I will make a general comment that I recollect what Mr. Stevens was referring to. I think the last time the ETOB test was presented to the board, we had some discussion of it. I won't go into particulars here, but I think a conclusion of that was that we had thought that a working session to just kind of flesh out, where the ETOB test is essentially immaterial because it's a state prescribed test. There's nothing that the FPDR plan can do to influence or change that particular defined test. But if there are concerns about disability benefits in particular, I think we also left it that disability retirement was kind of a concept in name. The benefits can be provided whether or not they're labeled disability benefits. But without going into particulars here, I recollect that we had thought that perhaps just a working session might be in order, may take 2 or 3 sessions just to try and get clarity on what the issues were, what the concerns were, to see if it merited taking any specific unique action for the FPDR plan. So I just wanted to leave it at that, acknowledging that had been an intent several years ago, but with COVID, that certainly got cast aside, and that if we can, perhaps next month, talk about further whether or not we could possibly resurrect that.
If I may say one thing back, I hope that you will support the reconstitution of our committee to look at pension benefits and reform, because that's where it's got to start. Individuals can speak up, but they're not given the credibility that they should be. And it takes a committee with some power and force behind it and credibility. And now is the time.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, Sam, am I correct that Mr. Machise's comments are to follow action item 1?
That's correct. I think his was appropriate to follow this presentation. So
Okay.
we'll have him come up during the public's time after this one.
Okay, well then I think we're ready for the actuarial evaluation and levy adequacy analysis.
Yes. Greetings, trustees, and anyone else watching. For the record, I'm Stacy Jones. I'm the Deputy Director, but I'm also the Pension and Finance Manager here at the fund. And I am here just to introduce Scott Preppernow and Gary Deeth, who are from Milliman. They are 2 of the 3 actuaries at Milliman that we contract with, to do our legally required biannual plan valuation, which we use exclusively for financial reporting purposes. But we also ask them to stress test our tax levy every 2 years, since that is our almost exclusively, it's our primary funding source. So they're here to go through that presentation today and answer any questions that you all may have. I'll turn it over to them.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay, first of all? All right. If we could advance to the first slide. So as Stacy mentioned, we've completed both our every 2-year actuarial evaluation and the kind of accompanying levy adequacy modeling that we do. We'll get through the details of it in this presentation. There's a separate full written report of the evaluation that's in the board materials, so happy to answer questions on either or both throughout the presentation. In general, the levy adequacy is really meant to be used by interested parties to look at the magnitude of potential future levy requirements under different assumptions, and we'll show the details of that. If we could move to the next slide. Okay. So we last did this 2 years ago. There are no real material changes to the benefit provisions since our prior work. There are a limited number of assumption changes. When we last did this, it also coincided with the year that we did what's called an experience study, which is an actuarial term for we looked at all the assumptions and saw if they were still fit and updated them where need be. So that's usually done kind of best practice for a public pension plan every 5 to 10 years. So we didn't do another one of those this time. So most of the assumptions kind of carry forward from 2 years ago, but a few key ones are updated. The discount rate, which is really tied to a market bond index, as you'll hear in a moment, that gets updated. That affects the results of the present values in our valuation. Doesn't really affect the levy adequacy modeling or the results out of that. We did make a small update to the mortality assumption, and that's because the trustees chose 2 years ago to continue linking this mortality assumption to what PERS does for their police and fire members, since that's a much larger, more credible pool to kind of base mortality experience on, which requires a large number to get kind of an appropriate signal for experience on something like mortality. So that affects both the evaluation and the modeling. The update to the real market value So both what's happened in the last 2 years to the real market value that goes into the levy and forward-looking assumptions based on input from the city economist. Those are updated. Those affect the levy results. Doesn't really affect the valuation. There's more details we'll cover in a little bit, but those are kind of the key ones in the changes since last time. All right, next slide. Thank you. In a moment, I'll turn it over to Gary to walk through the details of the valuation, but as Stacy already mentioned, this valuation is really used for the starting point for financial reporting for the city. The June 30, 2022 valuation that we completed will be rolled forward or updated to later financial reporting dates, June 30, 2023 and 2024. So this provides the starting point for 2 years of financial reporting. Unlike most pension plans, the actuarial valuation that we produce for FPDR is not for determining the contribution rate to pre-fund the plan. Just given the nature of the pay-as-you-go benefits for the FPDR program under consideration here, it doesn't do that. And so that's both why we use kind of the assumptions that we use and why this has a pretty limited impact on the financial reporting and not on pre-funding the system. So before we get to the end of this, just to kind of summarize big picture, you'll see as we get through, the verdict hasn't changed much since 2 years ago. So projected benefit payments are pretty similar. The present value of those is quite different just because the discount rate has changed, and you'll see the effect of that. But the levy adequacy modeling that we'll get to at the end, the verdict is still very unlikely that the 280 threshold will be violated in the scenarios given the kind of the levers and the moving parts in the modeling. So to sum up kind of up front, the next slide. So by its nature, evaluation is very long-term. So if you think about it, we're projecting benefits that include current active employees who may work for another 15, 20 years, retire, live 30, 40 years in retirement. So it's a very long projection of benefit payments. Assumptions are key to that process. As noted here, the current kind of monthly benefit payments tied into this are about $12 to $13 million per month. And we project that to increase for the next 14 years in our model, and then ultimately start a slow, gradual decline once all FPDR2 members have retired, essentially. But since it is so long-term, the results are highly dependent on the assumptions that are used in the model, and Gary will walk through the details of that and then kind of the final results of the valuation.
All right, could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so as Scott already covered, we've updated the discount rate and mortality. The one other relatively minor assumption is the 27 pay period adjustment. So you may well be aware, the way that the plan works, you look at the 365 days before retirement to come up with the final pay, and depending which month you retire in, that could include 27 pay periods or 26. So we looked at recent experience for how many people are retiring in the 27 pay period eligible month, which happens relatively infrequently, but members are aware of the benefits of retiring in those months. And we updated that to reflect recent experience. On the next slide, we have a bit more detail on that. So here we have a little bit more detail on the assumptions. You can see the discount rate is tied to a 20-year government bond index, which has moved up and down a bit over the past several years. So for this valuation, we're at 354, which is quite a bit higher than what we had for the valuation 2 years ago at 221. So the impact of a increase in the discount rate is going to be a pretty significant decrease in the present value of liabilities. Doesn't affect the actual cost of the plan, really. It's just how the costs are reflected in your GASB reporting. The mortality, as Scott mentioned, was a minor update just to stay consistent with the PERS police and fire assumptions. And then 27 pay period update was, we looked and saw about 78% of retirements in the last 6 years have been in the favorable 27 pay period months. Our previous assumption was about 65% would occur in those months, so we just updated that to 75% to get a bit closer to recent experience without overshooting it. On the next slide. Okay,
Gary,
so
can I interrupt just briefly? Would you prefer that we took questions at the end, or should we interrupt you?
oh, you're
in the-
certainly welcome to interrupt with questions.
Okay, then just a quick one before we leave. Assumption changes. I'm not, if you could update us on the current inflation assumption, it's in everyone's mind now. Obviously, the inflation assumption affects the results and other assumptions. So just remind us what it is and
Yeah.
why no change was made to that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So currently the inflation assumption is 2.25%, which I realize seems a bit strange with it being so high in the last couple of years, but it's really intended to be a long-term assumption. So we still think that that is a reasonable assumption. There are a range of different numbers you could use for that would still be reasonable. Yeah, we stuck with the assumption that's developed in the experience study 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware also, so is this consistent with the Oregon PERS assumption?
So Oregon PERS's inflation assumption, I think, is 2.4, is that right? Yeah.
Right.
So it's a little
Okay.
higher, which
But-
is just
But
when
still
it was
close, generally speaking.
Yes.
Right. And
Thank you.
one more point, Trustee McLeod, that I think 2 years ago when that was updated, it was, part of the rationale was that's pretty consistent with the long-term Fed target of about 2% on their measure translates to something like 2.25 on a CPI measure. So it was, reasonable at the time, still reasonable long-term, even though recent inflation has certainly been higher. There are differing opinions about what that's going to mean in the future, but actual effects of recent inflation being higher on benefits and pay and what's actually come through in the last 2 years is already reflected in the data, and this is just a forward-looking assumption that I think no one is expecting to be accurate for the next year or 2 years, but long-term is still reasonable for the purpose of the modeling.
Thank you.
Okay. So as Scott mentioned, benefit provisions, no significant changes there. There was a minor item with an arbitration ruling that non-represented members would get the benefits of the 27 pay period adjustment. That had a small impact, but no major plan provision changes. The COLAs, what we have assumed for the COLAs also stayed the same. We did see that the board had chosen 2% COLAs for each of the last 2 years, whereas the assumption is a 2% COLA on pre-October 2013 service and a 1.75% beyond that. The long-term assumption, as far as we know, is still reasonable. If the board has direction to update that, we would be happy to, but overall, we haven't seen that updating that to, say, go all the way to 2% would have a really material impact on the results. And we think that, as it stands, it seems like a reasonable approximation of the average experience we've had, where in the most recent 3 or 4 years, it's generally been around 2% or 2%/1.75%. But then for several years before that, it was 2% for 2013 and before service and 1.25% for the service after that date. Next
Thank
slide,
you.
please.
I will stop you here just to mention to the other trustees here to see if anyone has any concerns about that. I do agree. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that the difference in the long-term projected value of benefits would be pretty modest to apply just a flat 2% COLA increase. I would assume it would be fairly modest. But since you were saying if we had some interest in this, so I just want to open it up to other trustees here to see or to reflect on that during the course of the presentation here and discuss at the end whether or not that's something that you feel strongly about one way or the other.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the liabilities that we come up with are the present value of the future projected benefit payments. And we'll see in a couple of slides after this, projected benefit payments are very similar to how they were measured 2 years ago. But the liability, as Scott mentioned, has changed pretty significantly. That's just because of the discount rate. That's just the basis that the plan uses for GAS reporting purposes because the plan is not pre-funded. We also use a cost allocation method to reflect how members accrue liabilities or accrue benefits over time. So if a member is going to work for 30 years, and the member is currently 15 years into their career, then roughly half of the liability that the member would have at 30 years is reflected as of the current year, and then a portion will be attributed to the next year, which is called the normal cost, and there'll be a few more portions for the next several years of assumed service. So we end up with an accrued liability, which is the amount assigned to all past years of service, and a normal cost, which is the upcoming year. And then for inactive members, all of their liability is recognized in the accrued liability. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we have the modeled projected benefit payments. For the current valuation, they're shown in the green bars, and the prior valuation is the dotted black line, which is almost exactly the same. There was a very slight increase, which is what you'd expect to see as new members enter the plan. They're reflected in the valuation. The valuation only reflects people who are in the plan as of the valuation date. For FPDR, people who join the plan are in FPDR 3, where most of their benefits are covered by Oregon PERS, so they have a relatively modest effect on the future expected benefit payments. So this is basically what we would expect to see. And yes, we have benefit payments increasing for about 14 years, decreasing thereafter. On the next slide, we have the same information, but inflation adjusted. So there, this is showing the expected future benefit payments in terms of 2022 dollars. So just reflecting that a dollar today is going to be worth more than a dollar next year or the year after because of the effects of inflation. And let's see, next slide, please. Okay, so the results of the valuation. Previous valuation was measured at 221, current valuation is measured at 354. You can see the impact there on the accrued liability and the normal cost is fairly noticeable, whereas the projected base pay for the next year, that doesn't have, that's not affected by the discount rate. So that number increased slightly, which is what we'd expect to see. Next slide has a reconciliation of the liability between the two valuations. So the first line item there is the expected increase. So that would mostly come from the normal cost, the amounts assigned to the 2 years of service for each active member, along with the effects of interest as the benefit payments that are projected to be paid in the future become closer to the current date. Those amounts will have a higher impact on liabilities. And then that will be offset by removing the benefit payments of the last 2 years. So the net impact of those three items is the 124 increase there. Then the discount rate is by far the largest line item. So it decreased the liability significantly because the interest rate went up significantly. And then we have more modest changes there for the mortality assumption update, the 27 pay period update. And the last couple of items there are experience gain or loss items. So that is comparing where we expected the liabilities to be at this valuation date based on the prior valuation versus where they are now. And so for the most part, it followed results followed what we were expecting. The pay increases for continuing active employees were higher than we were expecting, so that increased the liabilities by the 63.9 there. And then there were a number of other very minor items that in combination increased it by another 25.9. And I do want to emphasize that's for the salary item there is for continuing active employees. So you saw in the prior slide that the actual increase in overall payroll was pretty modest. And that's because the head count, the number of active members, decreased. So even though there was a loss on salary for continuing actives, the number of actives who went out had an offsetting impact. Next slide. All right.
And I'll pause there for a second just in case there are any other questions about the valuation before we move on to the kind of forward-looking modeling.
One quick question.
Go ahead.
On the assumption for mortality, what does that 16 represent?
What is that?
The 16.
Oh, the 16.
Loss.
Okay. So, yes, good question. So there was a small increase in liabilities for the update on our mortality assumption, which I realize probably seems a bit strange because with COVID the last couple of years, mortality rates have been higher. The reason for that is that the mortality assumption is tied to an assumption set by Oregon PERS, which would last have been updated based on experience through the end of 2020. And Oregon PERS uses, for its projection of future mortality improvement, data from the Social Security Administration, which would have gone through 2017 for that. The reason for that is just it takes a long time to get a good measure of the rate at which mortality or longevity will increase in the future. So basically, we're seeing a lag effect there, even though you might expect that since there were more deaths, maybe the mortality would have the opposite impact. To the extent that there were more deaths in the last 2 years, those are reflected in the liabilities, and that would be one of the items in the experience gain or loss, of which there were many that offset things in different directions.
Can I translate what you said there? To be that the change in the mortality assumption is for what we expect in the future.
Yes.
Right.
Whereas in the plan experience, where it was favorable, meaning a reduction in the liability, that would have reflected in part higher than expected mortality during the COVID years.
Yes. The one extra wrinkle there is that overall mortality rates were higher than expected. So for the members who did actually die, that would reduce liabilities. We did actually see that overall there was a small increase in liabilities from mortality experience, which is because the deaths that occurred were mostly at higher ages where the expected future benefit payments are much lower than, say, somebody who is age 60. So we saw that there were slightly fewer deaths than expected at the early ages and significantly more deaths than expected at the later ages. So the net impact on a present value of benefits basis was a slight negative experience there, whereas you would expect favorable experience from a plan perspective.
Right.
Okay,
And
I did have, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, just to echo your point, that all of that experience is kind of already baked into the data at the measurement. And what we were showing with the 16 is a forward-looking thing, as Trustee McLeod indicated. And it's very much an open question right now, what, if any, long-term effects on mortality and future mortality improvement will come out of the COVID pandemic. And it's so much so that some of the Society of Actuaries who kind of studies this thing every year, they've kind of punted on it right now and said, we need to wait and see as data emerges. So that's not explicitly reflected going forward, and there's kind of arguments for it moving the needle a little bit one way or the other.
Thank you. I did have a separate question, just as super, it's not really important, but I'm just curious how, well, maybe these are unrelated because again, one is experience and one is an assumption change. So I was trying to determine whether or not salary changes, how those were going to impact the 27 pay period assumption, if those seem kind of integrated in a way. The higher the payroll increases, the more the 27 pay period, assumption gets leveraged. So just curious.
So those assumptions, they're effectively multiplicative with each other. So to the extent that salary increases were higher than expected, it's going to multiply the benefit. And to the extent that we expect the 27 pay period to be taken more frequently, it's going to multiply the benefit. Overall, you can look at the effects independently because they're not necessarily going to change behavior, or at least we're not modeling there's going to be a change in behavior. But yes, the two impacts do multiply, so there is leveraging there.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from any of the other trustees before we go on to the levy analysis?
Okay. So as we move into the levy analysis, ultimately our model has really two big categories of costs that come through in this modeling. One is the pay-as-you-go cost subcomponent, as we'll call it here, and that's really the FPDR 1 and 2 benefits, FPDR 3 death, disability, and disability-related medical benefits, along with administrative and operating expenses of the program. The pre-funded piece is the FPDR 3 charge on FPDR 3 payroll for their participation in Oregon PERS OPSERP tier. So that piece has its own moving parts. We've talked a lot in the valuation about the moving parts in FPDR. Oregon PERS has its own complexities, but the costs there are really a variable piece that gets set based on assumptions adopted by the PERS board, based on experience of Oregon PERS, including most notably investment return on the Oregon PERS fund. So that's the variable piece. And then also in here is 9% of payroll contribution to the account-based individual account program, IAP, in Oregon PERS. So those are really the underlying pieces that we'll be modeling here. Next slide, please. Okay. So during this projection period that we're looking at, we are continuing the transition from the active population being FPDR 2 to FPDR 3. Right now, I think at the valuation day, payroll was roughly 50-50 between those two tiers. So during this period, the levy is really funding two generations simultaneously. FPDR 1 and 2 members are funded on a pay-as-you-go basis during their retirement years. And so that's going to extend through this projection period and beyond. And then you're pre-funding FPDR 3 for their participation in OPSERP. And as noted, the disability and administrative costs are also pay-as-you-go. So as we'll see here, and as we've seen for prior iterations of this modeling, higher levies and near-term costs are just part of transitioning from a pay-as-you-go system to a pre-funded system. Next slide, please. Putting kind of one more point on that, the 06 charter reform that created this transition from FPDR 2 to FPDR 3 changed a few things. And what's shown here in the blue box is what we sometimes refer to as the fundamental cost equation for a pension plan, where the cost of a plan is equal to the benefits that are paid, plus any administrative expenses, and then offset by any investment earnings that come from pre-funding the plan. So when the 06 charter reform happened, created an FPDR 3 level of benefits, which is a group with a lower benefit amount, and created the prospect of investment earnings by pre-funding in Oregon PERS. So both of those things long-term will reduce the cost of the benefits provided, since lower benefits for a new tier, and by pre-funding, getting investment earnings to help pay part of those benefits. But the time frame over which this happens is, the way it was designed, quite slow. It's as new entrants come in, and it's over multiple generations. So those cost savings do accrue very slowly, and as we see in the modeling, you have higher costs for a period here, and then eventually we'll have lower costs. Next slide, please. Okay, now before we get into it, the details of the model and the results, helpful to bear in mind sort of what a model is and does and isn't in this case. So we can't quantify everything that could possibly happen, but we are focused on the big factors that drive levy variability. And the main two are called out here: changes in the real market value for Portland properties that deviate from the baseline forecast. And then the other big piece of volatility that you'll see here is just what Oregon PERS earns on their investment portfolio, because that's really going to affect the cost of OPSERP and that FPDR 3 pre-funded part of the benefit. Now, it does work that in several of our scenarios, there's kind of a linkage here that you can have scenarios where both of those work against you or both of those work for you in terms of the cost of the plan. And that's built into our model with sort of the correlation between the moving pieces here. Next slide, please. And so the starting point for our model is our valuation. So everything that we just discussed in the prior section here, that all kind of underlies it. And then the RMV value provided by the city of about $178.5 billion as of the start of 2022, which was used for the 22-23 fiscal year requests. And then importantly, our starting point for growth in that RMV value was informed by the city economist, and we actually assumed 0% for the first year, which isn't fully known yet, but is largely baked at this point. So assuming 0%, and then for each year after that, we're going to assume across these 10,000 scenarios that we model a big variety, but they're going to be centered around a median expectation provided by the city economist. So 2% for the first year, and then 4% is that kind of center point for every other year in the model, with significant variation underlying around that. For Oregon PERS, we reflected here for 2022 an estimated year-end return of negative 0.7%, so a loss for the year, which was the published number at the end of November. It was the most recent available at the time we were working with this. we also have variability for all future years for the Oregon PERS return that are centered around a 6.9% long-term assumption over on average but have individual years that are well double digits or negative double digits. So it's the same kind of model that Oregon PERS uses for their financial modeling on a similar basis. Next slide, please. As I said, we reflect 10,000 scenarios, so you will not see 10,000 different lines on these upcoming charts, but we kind of stack these in candlestick or box and whisker charts that I'll spend a moment to explain when we get to them. Next slide. And then lastly, while we reflect kind of the big movers that we expect to be determining the costs and the levy over this projection period, there are certain things that we don't model, including what if property tax law changes and all of this kind of shifts one way or another, that's outside the model. What if Oregon PERS benefits change or Oregon PERS assumptions change? What about certain intricacies in the way compression or delinquency may change over time? So those kind of things would revise the model, but those are not built into it. All right, next slide. All right, so the first actual results we'll see here are the pay-as-you-go cost subcomponent. And while it's hard to see at this is actually a stacked kind of candlestick chart that show from the 5th percentile to the 95th percentile, and that black dot is the median. The reason it's hard to see on here is because there's not much variability on this piece of the puzzle. The pay-as-you-go costs are pretty predictable here. And they start at the median, at the dot here, of just under $160 million, and the median ends at about $240 million at the end of the projection period. So these are the costs for paying the FPDR 1, 2, and 3 benefits that are pay-as-you-go. So not the pre-funded piece. Okay, move on to the next slide. All right. So now this is the pre-funded cost subcomponent that reflects the OPSERP benefits for FPDR 3. And so these start lower at about 30 million, 31 million at the first year here, and grow over time as FPDR 3 becomes bigger and bigger part of the payroll, and ultimately is really 100% of the payroll by the end of this modeling period. There's much more dispersion here because there's the volatility associated with the Oregon PERS investment returns that could produce higher or lower returns depending on whether the plan averages something like a 2% return over the next 20 years or something like a 10%. So there's quite a bit of range built into what's shown here. And again, where here it's a little more visible just to illustrate the point that the black dots here are the median. The top of the little blue bars there are the 90th percentile and the 10th at the bottom, and then the little wicks above it are another 5%. Even so, this isn't showing every single result out of the model. There's 5% above or below in a given year that are outside of what's shown. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, total requirements. That's just our term for adding those two pieces together, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but that's the combined shape, and you can see where it gets to. Starts 190 million. At the median is near 360 million at the end of this period. All right, next slide. One more forward, please. It went back at first. Yeah, now we're there. Thank you. Oh, no, this is good. This is what we want. Yeah, thank you. All right, perfect. So those total requirements, we do actually adjust those before we turn these into an RMV amount. And this is where some of the details of the levy come into it in the input from both Stacy and the city economist. So there's a decrease to this amount to account for other revenue sources. There's an increase for kind of a net effect of discounts and delinquencies, and an increase for tax compression. Again, all those are things where we got input from the people who actually know about those things. So that's built in here. And that creates our final levy as a dollar amount. The net effect, it's detailed in the appendix, but the net effect is that for any given year in here, there's between a 7.2% and a 7.7% upward load on those requirements to get to the amount that are going to go into the levy, essentially, to account for those. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is that final dollar amount reflecting the compression adjustments and so on. And so a little bit higher than the slide from a couple a couple slides ago, but same general pattern, same general picture. And then next slide, please. So then to convert that into the RMV rate, we have the underlying projection of what real market values have grown during this period. And we're going to compare that and particularly take interest in how this compares to the $280 per $1,000 limit that sits within the charter. The RMV levels do vary significantly within our model, and you can see detail on that on the appendix, and we can certainly answer that in questions if it's helpful. It's also worth noting that in the 2 years since the model, the RMV grew 12%. When we were sitting here doing this 2 years ago, we were at an earlier stage of the pandemic and also assumed 0% growth for 1 year based on the input at the time and all the uncertainty, and then started to have something a little more normal after that. But as those 2 years transpired, it actually continued to grow. So that, all else, if you were to compare this to our results from 2 years ago, that helps make it a little less likely that you trespass the 280 threshold, because despite everything, the RMV still did go up. Next slide, please. Okay. And so here is kind of the final payoff of all this that developed those final contributions that then get compared to the RMV, where the current level of $1.14 per 1,000 at the median level, that grows for a number of years, peaks out in the early 2030s in the 143 range before decreasing to, by the end of this model, to under $1.10 again. More interestingly, at the 5th percentile, those numbers grow and get to about $2 in the highest years before dropping again as the kind of peak descends. But as called out in the bright red box here, the 280 limit is actually exceeded in any of these 10,000 scenarios in less than 1% of the scenarios, which is, we've done this modeling now for 10 or 12 years, and did not always used to be the case. We used to have scenarios in 2012, 2014, where more than 5% of scenarios in a given year were trespassing this. So the growth in RMV and the Oregon PERS returns over the last decade or so has meant that this is a lot less likely, based on this starting point, to run into a problem in the next 20 years with the cap than where we were, 8, 10 years ago. And that's just not because a lot changed with the nature of the benefits, but it's because a lot changed with the nature of kind of the RMV and the Oregon PERS fund behind it. So this is really our last slide to present, but I'm happy to answer questions on this or anything else, so I'll pause there.
So just real quick, Chris Culp here. You had said earlier in the presentation that in about 14 years, we're expecting all FPDR employees to either be retired and most of the payments going forward to PERS. Is that correct?
And I may have been a little general as far as not all having retired, but that's kind of where the center of mass, if you think about it, where we're about 16 years since the creation of FPDR3, so 14 more years. Most are retired in our model.
Yeah, and the thing to note there is most FPDR2 members will be retired. They'll still be getting benefit payments for another 30, 40 years.
Right, and so with that and survivorship, do we still see a lot of the finances on the fund still, I can't see them transferring to FPDR quite yet. I still see the fund paying the bulk of those survivorship benefits. Is that true? How does that factor in, I guess, is my question.
So in the projections, we have the two pieces, the pay-as-you-go portion and the
more ancillary non-Oregon PERS benefits, but the extra disability or death benefits.
What am I hearing?
Was that the question, or was it the survivorship?
No, that kind of answers it. I just want to make sure that we were thinking that the fund still has a lot of liabilities and just paying that survivorship.
Yes,
and it was clarified. We're still looking at all that.
And the fund, because of the pay-as-you-go nature for FPDR2, it's going to have a lot of liability for those retirees throughout their retirement, right? It's like that. I wasn't indicating that that liability goes away in any way when they retire. It's more just that that's when you get the inflection point, because Now those benefits are no longer growing, they're decreasing as someone ages in retirement. That's why we see that kind of pattern in the model, and it's not a coincidence that the projection changes about the time that FPDR2 members are by and large retired.
And if I could just chime in that the whole active workforce is FPDR3 and PERS, that's the moment of peak expense. And then we kind of start to come down the other side as we start to have mortality in the FPDR2 population. But it does include, benefits to widows and widowers in their modeling. It's the retirees, and then they have assumptions about how many will have surviving spouses and how much those benefits will be, and all those things built in.
Thank you.
Along that line, just taking us back to the valuation stuff, but picking up on Trustee Kolb's question, I think on slide 10 of the valuation slides that you have a chart with green benefits shown by year. Not this one, but way back. You'll see a substantial amount out into the future for the FPDR 1 and 2 retirees. And then
Yeah, Trustee McLeod, we certainly can create a version of this and share it with the trustees that splits FPDR1, FPDR2, and FPDR3. The FPDR3 is going to be very, very small on here, as you'll see. But you'll see the pattern of shifting from the current FPDR1 retirees who are on there, the FPDR2, and then the shift to where this will be primarily FPDR2 in the coming years, and the little bit that exists for FPDR3. So we can certainly break that out.
Perfect. That'd be helpful. Thank you. Are there other questions about the report?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think as an action item, I think the only thing is really to accept the report unless there's anything beyond what was already requested that you would like from us.
I think that we do need to take public testimony first, because I think we do have one person signed up for public testimony on this topic.
Okay, Kevin Matchis is now going to give his presentation, and you have 3 minutes for public comment. At the 2-minute mark, you'll hear a noise, and that means you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Matches. In September and November, I urged the board to request the actuary provide an analysis of a comprehensive actuarial funding policy. I pointed out red flags that came from several sources that had brought up this issue since 2011, the city auditor, city staff, the public accounting firm that audits the city's financial statements, disclosures on the financial statements themselves, and national experts. I'd like to add one more red flag. You may be aware that the city has had a credit rating of AAA since 1976. Credit ratings agency Moody's has placed the city on rating under review for downgrade. According to Joseph Manoleas, the analyst who works at Moody's, credit analyst, FPDR is a central focus of their review. And so I would like to address questions that came up at previous board meetings as time allows. So turning to the next slide here. Okay. Sure. So this is the additional red flag I mentioned, that credit ratings agency Moody's has placed the city on rating under review for downgrade, and that FPDR is a central focus of their review. And so, yeah, with the remaining time, would like to address questions that came up in prior meetings. So turning to the next slide, slide 3 here. I think many of the questions get back to this concept of negative amortization. The bars in black here are the plan's costs based on the actuarial valuation that you just heard about. It's the sum of 1 year's service, called normal cost, and 1 year of interest on the unfunded liability. The bars in green are the cash contributions that fund the plan. The difference between the two represents negative amortization in red. The point I'm making is that kicking the can down the road for future generations to pay for service completed before they were even born, in many cases, creates an egregious level of intergenerational inequity stretched over multiple decades. Is the intergenerational inequity getting better over time, staying about the same, or getting worse? Positive amortization indicates that things are getting better. By contrast, zero amortization would indicate that the plan is treading water. Negative amortization indicates that things are getting worse. It was pointed out that a transition period began in 2006 when the plan was closed to new hires. The question came up whether the plan had progressed somehow, perhaps as much as halfway towards pre-funding. No, the plan has engaged in hundreds of millions of dollars of negative amortization. Not only has the plan not made progress towards eliminating the unfunded accrued liability, it has moved in the opposite direction over the last 16 years. The plan's current funding policy continues to engage in over $50 million of negative amortization in the coming year. Therefore, the unfunded accrued liability is expected to grow under current assumptions. Turning to the next slide. At the last meeting, there seemed to be an acknowledgement that the cumulative future contributions would be over $8 billion over the remaining life of the plan. The question came up, does it matter if much of the future benefit payments are attributable to the unfunded accrued liability that's past service rather than future service? I think there's two ways to address that question. First is in absolute terms. Future service is going to cost over $2 billion under the current funding policy. I think that $2 billion is a lot of money. Second is to point you to what other public pension plans in the United States are doing here on this chart. Do plans with higher unfunded accrued liabilities engage in less amortization than plans with lower unfunded accrued liabilities? Based on the peer group from public plans data, I find the opposite is true. Plans with lower funded ratios tend to amortize a greater percentage of their total accrued liability. In this respect, Portland is an extreme outlier compared to other public pension plans in the United States. Thank you.
Catherine, you were muted. Were you speaking?
Apologies. Thank you very much. Was asking Sam or Stacy if they'd like to make any comments at this point.
No, but if there's any question that the board has, I am here and can answer them to the best of my ability. And, you know, our actuaries are also here, obviously. So let me know if you have any particular question that you would want me to address.
Well, I have one question. Since you did introduce into record, Moody's, position that the city of Portland is currently under review for a downgrade, and you also articulated that FPDR is this, the central focus. So that seems to me that FPDR is what you're suggesting the cause of a potential downgrade. Is that your intention?
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let Kevin answer.
So according to what that credit rating analyst from Moody's emailed to me, he said that FPDR is a central focus of their review. It happens to be the case they changed their methodology for how they rate cities at this time, and that was what led to a number of cities, which included Portland, being put on rating under review for downgrade. So 3% of cities were put on rating under review for downgrade, and Portland was one of them.
Yeah, but there's no specific facts or anything that Moody had shared with you that FPDR is, based on the way that your projection is showing that that FPDR is in fact the potential cause of the downgrade, right? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you clearly.
I am just sharing exactly what I was told by Moody's.
Okay.
Is that, yeah, FPDR is a central focus of the review.
Okay, but okay.
I do feel like I should say for the record, that I did speak with the city's debt manager this morning. We'll know tomorrow if Moody's is downgrading the city or not, and we will get an explanation for why, so we don't have to speculate too much about, what the cause may be. And I can't speak to the perspective of the individual Moody's analyst, but from the city's debt manager said that if the city is downgraded, it will be because of a methodology change related to the Utility Bureau's revenue bonds. And not FPDR. We always go through this process when we have a new Moody's analyst where we have to explain FPDR. It appears to be unfunded from an accounting point of view, but it's really 100% funded when you look at the levy piece. Now, that's not to say it's not expensive, but it is totally funded. And so, there's an education piece that happened back in December. Now I'm just repeating what the debt manager said, but Moody's will come out with something. It's expected tomorrow, so we don't have to speculate.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy, because that's the point I want to make sure I understand whether that inference was in fact reasonable and substantiated in relation to the rest of the presentation. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and we'll have some actual information so that neither of us have to speculate about and try to repeat third hand.
Any other trustee comments about Mr. Matthews' response to our earlier questions?
I have a question, not so much a comment. And, apologize, Mr. Matthews. I don't have your presentation from the last time, but on the last slide, there was a request for an actuarial review to be done. Is that still a central point you're asking from this board to see if we could work on an actuarial review? I don't have the wording in front of me, but can you speak to that? Is that still what you're asking for?
Yes, so yeah, my request this whole time has been that the board request from its actuary an analysis of a comprehensive actuarial funding policy.
Okay, we could consider making a motion to do that today. I think last time we deferred on doing that because we wanted to have a full complement of trustees present to make that recommendation. We have 4 of us today instead of 5, so we could move forward with that if people would like to consider doing so.
I would be interested to hear from Sam what is entailed, or Stacy, what would be entailed in going forward to request this actuarial review.
I think part of it is we have to get the details exactly what this review is supposed to show. I don't think we fully understand that yet, what it's supposed to show. Second is it will include a budget. And I'm going to tell you it's going to be 4 or more digits wide to get this kind of review done. So you're going to have to approve a budget for this if we go through with it. I mean, so that's what we need to do with it. And we'd have to confirm that if Milliman would be the one that conducts it, if they could do it under their agreement, or if we would have to contact another actuarial firm to do it, because it's a unique thing. Stacy?
Oh, I would just add that I just want to make sure that the board spends the money wisely on that kind of a study, because we have the actuaries here today. Nobody can predict things until they run it through, but pre-funded plans are obviously cheaper than pay-as-you-go plans. And if we were to pre-fund the remaining benefits owed to FPDR2, it may very well, probably will be cheaper in total after you discount to net present value. But I think setting that aside and all the complexities of switching to a pre-funded plan and having an investment board and changing, all of those things for a closed plan is ironically, the intergenerational impacts. We are asking the current generation of taxpayers to fund 2 generations of pensions simultaneously. And if we tried to pre-fund those FPDR 1 and 2 as well, now we've, tripled or quadrupled the impact on the current generation. And as Trustee McLeod said last time, the ship has sailed on no matter what we do from here. The people who are receiving the services are not going to fund it entirely, but we have begun that transition. It's just a long transition. So if the board wants to look at that, I can tell you, I think, without overstepping too much, and perhaps Trustee McLeod would want to chime in here, but that's the kind of result you would probably get. And so we want to make sure that the board, before we spend money on something like that, that's something that you'd want to look at.
And Sam here, one last point is this would require a charter change, because we're only allowed per the charter to pay as you go for 1 and 2. So if we wanted to change the type of funding plan, get new funding mechanisms in, that would require a charter change.
I will weigh in on Stacy's comments. I cannot argue with the concept that setting aside money in advance does a good job of matching the earning of retirement benefits with the year's services provided. But except for a handful of, roughly 600 or 700 active FPDNR2 employees who are much closer to retirement than they are to beginning their service, I'd say they're probably on average 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through their service. So most of their earning of those benefits has already been attributed to prior service, and all of the retirees and inactive members, that's the case. So there is no way to match for those folks. There's no way to match it to the years when they provided this service. They can't do it anymore. So the question is really, how much will the added investment earnings reducing the overall long-term cost of the plan? That's a benefit, but there are complexities to that. How will that weigh against burdening further the current generation of taxpayers? Because if the two main motivations here are the potential to reduce the overall long-term cost of the plan and to provide some intergenerational taxpayer equity. Well, if you're overloading the current generation of taxpayers, they're already funding the new benefits for service people, plus paying for the other retirement benefits. If we accelerate the funding for that, then we're just putting more burden on top of whatever they're doing. And so at some point, you really have to ask, is it fair to squish all of that into the next 15, 20 years? Or is it just more equitable to let the FPDNR 1 and 2 benefits ride out what they're doing? Pre-funding is already happening now for the FPDNR 3 folks. So that's really the decision to be made. So I have a bias toward the status quo, but I speak only for myself. And I guess I would be open to not proceeding only as far as getting a quote and a possible timeline for some analysis and specifying further what it might do. That's as far as I would be prepared to go right now with my vote. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Well, the only thing I would ask is, given that the speaker had heard comments from, Trustee McLeod and Stacy, if you, want like a minute to sort of comment, offer comments back to you, whatever they may have just shared.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, for the board, please don't speculate about what the analysis would show. The analysis is going to tell you the truth of how much cost savings can be achieved by pre-funding the plan. End of story. There's no need to guess what that would be, because that's what the output of the analysis would be.
Thank you.
I think part of the analysis that's done is going to have to describe mechanisms to make this happen. That's the big issue that we have, is the mechanism to make this happen. When you pre-fund a plan, we have to find that money that should have already been contributed to a pre-funded plan. So do we put out bonds to try to cover it? Do we double, triple the taxes to people to try to build up that so you get a true pre-funded plan? So that's huge, and that's what we're talking about. Either of those mechanisms requires you to either raise taxes to build up the fund or raise taxes to pay off bonds, the premium and the interest on bonds over time with it. So there's a cost up front to save money in the end. And if you're doing an analysis, you have to describe the different ways to do it so you can compare what's going to happen today to save money tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, as I agree with Trustee McLeod that, while costs should be something that we need to keep in mind of, I think the question ultimately is that what is the value of this report going to get us and help us consider next steps. So I think at this point, I'm in agreement that it probably makes, as far as we can go at this point, is really just, getting a detail of what do we expect to commission for this research, and then what, consider what may be the next steps that we can kind of take once we get the report.
I guess my question is directed at both of you. Sam, you're saying that if you're going to do analysis, you need to have the mechanisms for the cost. And I'm wondering, Mr. Machis, is that your intent as well? Or do you just want to demonstrate that there is cost savings to be found by changing in the method that you're talking about?
Yeah, so as I said at the last meeting, I'm not here to advocate for any particular funding policy, right? I showed some illustrative examples using a cursory analysis of what that could look like. But it's, you know, it wasn't my role to say exactly what that should be. Should it be purely through changing a property tax rate, or should it be through some combination of that and pension obligation bonds? So there are a variety of, you know, tools out there for how you'd go about actually implementing it, right? And I think that's what the analysis would actually look at in detail.
All right, would anyone, it sounds to me like we're maybe to a point, please chime in, trustees. Are we to a point that we want to make a motion to have staff work to outline a proposal for analysis and to secure a bid for actuarial services to prepare that analysis? Are we
Just one quick comment.
Mhm.
I'm always very concerned with what the taxpayers of the city are facing already. And if this is going to add a burden to them outside, I mean, we have to think about what the school districts are doing. The services that we're providing them are huge. Nobody's, you know, questioning that. But if this is going to, I don't see it affecting the fund as much as I see it completely affecting the taxpayers. Yes, there's going to be some savings in the short term, but I just don't think in this current economy, we can put more burden on the backs of the taxpayer who's already seeing, you know, huge levies on their tax bill. I don't see a whole lot of value in it. I think we're going down the right path and we're going to make this thing correct here within the next 14-ish years. I don't see that as being a prolonged amount of time to offset whatever this research is going to cost us. I don't know. I just don't want to put any more burden on taxpayers this time.
Is to consider what it would cost the plan to secure some information, you know, potentially from Milliman, to put some numbers on what Mr. Matches has said here in terms of the accelerated cost to pre-fund these benefits. And that would be then have to be considered along with issues like added burden on taxpayers and the practical aspects of how to actually implement that, you know, charter changes and setup of investment fund and all those things in a decision about whether or not it's something even worth pursuing. So step one would just be to potentially outline a concept or the specifics of what might be valued by an actuarial firm to put some numbers in place of what Mr. Match has estimated.
In that case, I motion that we vote on whether to proceed with outlining an engagement and the unsecured bids on what the cost would be for that engagement.
Before we vote, would it be possible, I just asked Milliman, since they are our current actuaries under contract, a little bit about, well, you know, what's the feasibility of this analysis and what would it look like? And I don't know if you might want to hear just a few words from them.
Sure.
Yes.
Up to.
Thanks again for the record. Scott Preppernon with Milliman. Just wanted to mention that, so absolutely agree with many of the points that Mr. Machis is making and that I was able to see the September presentation. It is definitely true that a pay-as-you-go system, as it is, it's the highest cost way to fund a pension plan. Pre-funding the plan and adding investment earnings, like we talked about in our presentation, is it's a subtraction in that fundamental cost equation. It would produce a lower cost profile for the fund. And so we're happy to help collaborate with staff on what an analysis would look like and to do that analysis if you want it. We know that's ultimately going to be what it comes out to. And we can show that under different scenarios and are happy to do it. To Trustee Culp's point, I think the decision point and the appetite for what you would do with that is certainly key, right? We're happy to do the analysis. We're actuaries. We love that. But we want to make sure we're giving you something that's useful and that we're meeting your needs. So again, happy to answer questions, happy to spec out what that would look for, but Mr. Machis is absolutely right. That is a lower cost way to run a plan. That's why you pre-fund a plan. That's why FPDR and the structure, if not unique, is certainly very uncommon. And we weren't involved in the 06 reforms of why kind of the transition at that time was decided to be done at the pace it was. Doing it faster would be cheaper long term, but there is, more money now one way or another to have greater savings long term. And so, again, we're happy to help in any way, but that is the fundamental.
Would your analysis, though, include the types of ways how you get that savings?
So I think that would have to be, the math is what it is, and then this would really be something where we would want to work with the fund and with budget people from the city on, here are different ways that this could be done, and here how that looks like a different profile, whether, so there's a lot that goes into sort of, again, what's the appetite and what's the mechanism beyond just the math.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. The reason, I don't want it to appear that as if we're kicking the can down, and then making a decision or not making a decision later. I think the question for me is whether this report that we're trying to commission is going to help us make an informed decision as to whether to proceed or not. And so I think that's, for me, that's really the outcome and the value of the, RFP, for lack of a better term, right? So, but if the decision, going back to what what Trustee Culp has said, is that, hey, at this point, it just doesn't make sense to add more, pressure on the taxpayers, then I don't see any value in getting the report, because if that's pretty much the means in going about funding the plan. So that's why, like I said, I think there's only value to the extent that, this report is going to help us make an informed decision as to, how to proceed and when to proceed. So that's my position.
Ultimately, I think that we're going to have to consider that taxpayers today are going to say, why do we have to pay for all the mistakes of 30 years ago and 20 years ago? Why is it only us? Why is it us for the next 10 years, the next 20 years? Why do we have to bear the full cost of that mistake or that decision, as opposed to just spreading it out on a pay-as-you-go basis over the remaining 30, 40 years as those benefit payments are made? That essentially stretches out that prior decision, so the pain is borne by not just the current taxpayers, but those a decade from now and another decade from now, et cetera. So I think that's really the choice, even though there might be dollars saved. Is it fair to lump that burden on the current set of taxpayers who are already bearing the cost of paying those benefits to those people and pre-funding the FPDR 3? So I think that's what it comes down to. And that would be weighed against cost savings. Is it just such a phenomenal difference in savings in dollars over the long term that you're willing to try and push that through and burden those taxpayers or not? So I, again, leave it. I wasn't exactly certain what the thought process was on making a recommendation to just get a quote and define the analysis, or whether we just were prepared to make a decision today about whether or not to proceed at all.
Just a little point here. You're only going to make a decision if you want us to do an RFP. Not making a decision is leaving the status quo, so you don't have to actively vote to keep the status quo. Status quo stays in place, the present plan, everything, and then you come out with it. So that's what the vote would be today, is just for the RFP, is what I'm understanding, or whatever else you want to do. If you don't want to go that route, nothing else has to change. You don't have to vote to keep going status quo.
Got it. So it would be helpful to hear from the other trustees, status quo, or do we request staff put together some scope of work and possible budget for some actuarial?
I do have one last question. I apologize. I'm not sure exactly who to address it to, but I'm not a financial or an actuarial person. So if someone could let me know a little bit about the AAA credit rating in terms of how, if it was downgraded, how that would affect the city's financial, how would it affect the equation even that we're talking about right now? How does that fold into the calculus of this particular discussion? Anybody? Okay.
So obviously, you have to pay higher interest if you have a lower credit. It works the same as it does, like, for a person. I'd have to grab the debt manager to get the spread on, we have the highest rating right now. If we went down a notch, what's the interest rate spread on that? And do the markets care, since this is a methodology change at Moody's that is driving this? There's going to be many, sort of factors in play there. But that's the short answer. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Matches, you're clearly a smart individual and you thought this thing through. I guess my last question, I might have missed this because I had some audio issues. If we take the hypothetical 14 years that we've been looking at to be transitioned over to PERS, in your best case scenario, what time frame would we be looking at if we took your suggestions and we moved this over to a prepaid plan? How much would we take off of that 14 years, I guess is my question. Do you have any of that data?
So just to be 100% clear, under the current policy, 14 years from now, it will mean you'll have no more, on average, no more folks accruing new benefits. But those benefits haven't been funded, so they still need to be paid for. And so under current policy, those benefits don't get paid for until after those folks retire. And so that will stretch for as long as they and surviving spouses, for example, live. So many, many years past when they're actually retired. And so the cursory analysis I presented at the last meeting looked at possibly amortizing the entire unfunded liability over either 15 years or 30 years, and looked at different possible return assumptions, with the idea being that, if you look at an extreme high return, extreme low return, I don't know exactly what it's going to be. You have to work that out with the actuary, but it's reasonable to say it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And so, when you do that now, based on the latest valuation, say a 30-year time frame, you could pay off the entire unfunded liability over a 30-year period by increasing cumulative contributions over that time period by just 2% to 9%, and eliminate every single subsequent contribution if the assumptions play out.
I think that's my questions. Contributions by whom?
The contributions currently come entirely from property taxes, so there's no, employee contributions.
I mean, 2% to 9% is massive. But with that said, I would like to see what it would cost to look at this, to have the real numbers in front of us before making a decision whether we actually dive into that data.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McClowry?
Yeah, I mean, so more information is always good. I'm okay with the idea of getting a quote and getting an idea of what the actual cost would be to get the analysis done. I think that seems like an okay first step to me. I understand the points being made that what's the point per se if we see the barrier in front of us of how we're going to pay for it. I understand that. But if we're just at the point of figuring out, okay, what is the next step going to cost and what is entailed in the analysis, I think it's okay. I'm okay with going forward to get that information. And I think there clearly will have to be some further conversations about the rest of it.
Thank you. And Trustee Wall?
Yeah, I'm all about making informed consent or informed decisions, so I vote for getting a quote as well.
Okay,
Or at
would
least do
someone-
more studies to help us make that decision.
Before you vote on it, we need a very specific resolution of what you're looking for me and my staff to be doing. And if it involves an RFP, let's go with that, because there will be some follow-up. We have that as we go along and do this. So I need it very specific in what you're doing.
And I don't think, I wouldn't recommend that we issue an RFP because that costs a lot of money just in and of itself. We have an actuary on staff that we have high confidence in. I will say that their contract is ending on March 31st, and we are currently in an RFP process for actuarial services because we have hit the limit of how long we can extend our contract with Milliman. So, ideally we'll have, we'll know who the plan's actuaries will be come April 1st. And I would, suggest that all the RFP is already out there and responses are already, coming in, so we can't change it now. But we could, when we choose an actuary, we could negotiate as part of the contract or ask for a quote. And now in our contract with Milliman, we allow for ad hoc analyses. There's a rate. We can ask them to do ad hoc analyses, and like Scott said, they're happy to do it and give us a sense of how much it would cost. As Scott said, we all know the outlines of the outcome. There's no question about what the outcome will be. But if it's a matter of degree or whatever that the board would like to see, then we can certainly have them do that.
Okay, following up with that, if we don't go with an RFP, but we go out and request, whether it's Milliman or a new actuary, if Milliman is not the new actuary, to add this in, we're going to need a statement of work of exactly what we're expecting them to do before anybody can come up and say, here's the amount, here's what it's going to cost us, here's the time it's going to take us, and here's what's expected of the FPDR staff to join in. So again, I like it to be pretty specific as what you're looking for us to bring back to you for what, because the next thing would be is this is what it's going to cost to do it, and then the next thing would be you want to go that way, and then we would go back and do the formal negotiation with whoever's going to do it and prepare, and then so you got a series of steps when you do an RFP, but the first one is you got to get, what are you looking for us to be doing? And then we can come back and go over stages and see if we need new approvals as we go stage through this project.
So you're really just asking the trustees to come up with an SOW, if you will, or the scope of...
We will come, and it basically is what's our next checkpoint? What do you want us to bring to you at the next checkpoint with this? That's what I'm looking for. It's got to be specific. Are we at the point that we want a statement of work? Because we could help draft the statement of work and vet it with you, but do you want that as your next checkpoint, or is the next one you just want an estimate provided by Milliman or another actuarial firm, what they think it would take to do? But at that point, and based on their assumptions, we'll validate the assumptions and go back. This is part of the negotiation you have with any type of RFP or any type of a study with this. But I'm looking for your direction to what do you expect us to bring back to you and when?
I think I would be interested in both a proposed scope of work and budget estimate.
Yeah.
Both. And if in order, probably the scope of work. If a budget can't be, this can just be preliminary estimates. But if maybe by the next board meeting, you could bring back to us a draft scope of work and some preliminary estimates that you might have been able to secure, that would be ideal, subject to formal, bid estimates after we've had a chance to look at that.
And I would just say that it would be very hard to do that for the March board meeting, given that we'll be negotiating to hire an actuary right then. So I would prefer to make that a May topic, because then we'll have an actuary that we can actually talk to and get an estimate. Is that okay, Trustee McLeod?
It is certainly with me.
Yeah, I would agree, because based on what you said before, that you guys are in the process of getting actuary anyway. So let's focus on the scope of the analysis of the work, and then once we agreed on that scope, then by then you'll likely have an actuary for a later meeting. So
yeah, I'm fine with that. I would also maybe suggest that regardless of the selection of actuary going forward, I would think that since Milliman has just completed this analysis, that regardless, they might be a suitable candidate to do this, ad hoc pre-funding analysis. They've got all the data, they've got assumptions. Unless we were prepared to wait a long time for the next valuation to be prepared, that might be the fastest way to go anyway.
Yeah, and we may want to revisit that decision when we know the outcome of that RFP process, because then we would no longer be under contract with Milliman, and then we would have to have a new contract with Milliman and all that. But I definitely see your point, Trustee McLeod.
Understood. So with that,
Will you know by the March meeting?
I would love to, but I am beholden to the city procurement process, which is a terrifying thing for anybody to have to utter. So yes, it is my hope and intent and plan that we will know. And if we don't have a final contract, that we're in the final stages of contract negotiation at the March meeting.
Hey, Sam, real quick, you mentioned opening the charter would be necessary to facilitate something like this. I can only imagine the fees to do that are substantial as well. Do you have any sort of an estimate off the top of your head? I won't hold you to it, that it would cost just to implement something, a change like this?
No, I can go through we can bring that up too when we start looking at the statement of work, is the process of going through the changing the charter. I will tell you the cost of an election for changing the charter, we will have to pay it because it's our request to make the charter. If it came from the city or another area in the city would fund it. But this would come from us, so we would have to fund the election, and that's why you'd like to piggyback it in on a general election or another election, so our fees are smaller. But I can come back in and walk you through the process of what needed for a charter change. And I will have to tell you, the city council will have to approve it. Because they have to approve any charter change, with the exception of what happens with the charter commission, but that process is already completed. The city council has to approve us taking a charter change to the voters.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that, yeah, the mechanism for changing the charter is council can refer a charter change, or there can be a citizen petition to change the charter. And, council's not going to have much interest in this. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that.
Yeah, I got to be honest, I'm starting to see less and less value in what we're asking to be put forward. Again, I'm seeing less and less value with what would be needed to do this. And I don't know how we ask the FPDR board or the staff employees to even start down this path at this point. With what we have in place right now, I see as being valid, and it's going to turn itself around at some point. I just can't see doing this for another 15 to 30 years at 2% to 9% burden on taxpayers, plus the costs. I think I'm losing less and less support in this.
The only thing I would add is that certainly, I hear all sides of arguments, but for me though, in order to make sure that we have the ability to make an informed decision, that we have all the information necessary to get on record, that we did in fact consider all aspects of making a decision, including the cost-benefit analysis of what is the process for going through a change. I still think that we should go through with getting the scope of service drafted, and then make a decision as to whether to proceed or not afterwards. So, but I do hear you, Trustee, Culp, that it's becoming less and less attractive. But I still think that going through the formal process of making that decision based on all the available information in front of us would actually serve us, better in the long run.
with that, could I have you transition that into a formal motion to proceed? Trustee Wang?
Yes, I make a motion to proceed with asking the staff to draft a proposed scope of service for us to consider, and then, in time for our meeting in March.
May.
In May, sorry.
Yeah.
Would someone like to second that?
Then I guess the motion fails. So we stick with
Oh.
status quo.
All right, looks like it's a status quo for now.
Next, I grab my.
Okay. Okay, looks like we should move on to action item 2.
Yes, I'm on mute. So you had talked about just accepting the report from the actuaries.
Excuse me. That is correct.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to accept the actual report and levy analysis as presented to us?
I make a motion to accept the actuarial analysis.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Scott and Gary from Milliman for the excellent work that they do with me and my team every year or every other year on this analysis. And also thank you to Mr. Machis for his very carefully considered comments today. I guess I should be in the middle, huh? Let me slide over. Is that gonna, poor cameraman. I guess I'll just stay where I am, and the camera guy doesn't have to move. Action item number 2. I'm sure you guys have heard enough about numbers, but we're not gonna give you a break. And we're gonna start talking about the budget. I know you're all tired, so I will try to go fast. And I have, I'm so lucky this year that all of you have been through a budget presentation at this point. So nobody's coming into this totally cold. So as always, please stop me if you have questions, and no need to wait until the end and ask me anything. And if I don't know, I'll tell you so, and we'll figure it out. So it is time to adopt our budget for the next fiscal year, which will be July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2024. We also put together a 5-year forecast every year so that we can kind of, when you're managing your own fund, you need to look further ahead than 1 year. Unlike every other bureau in the city, the board has the exclusive authority to adopt the FPDR budget. So you guys are it. Council, we will go through kind of the rest of the process that the city does, but that's just to include us in the final city budget at the end and to make sure that our budget reflects what it needs to reflect, where we intersect with, say, the police bureau and the fire bureau and the Office of Management and budget. So what we are asking you guys to do today is to take a look at the staff recommended budget that we put together. Let me know if you want to see any changes. And then hopefully approve something. There are additional materials in your book other than this presentation, which are some but not all of the budget office. I used to work there, so I shouldn't give them a hard time, but I mean, there's like 100 documents that go in. I've given you a sampling of what I think is most useful, but let me know if you have any questions about that. So moving on to the next slide, Julie. So this first slide shows you in the kind of the royal blue highlighted column is our recommended budget for next fiscal year with resources up on the top and then requirements or expenses down on the bottom. And then you will see 2 extra lines running along the bottom there. The first is a total net of tax anticipation notes, because we issue tax anticipation notes every year and then we repay them in the same fiscal year and they get double counted. It kind of inflates the size of the budget. So I like to show you the size of the budget with those stripped out. And then you can also see just benefit and administrative expenses running along the bottom because, again, since we have our own fund, there are expenses we call fund level requirements like contingency and some fund transfers and things like that. So that royal blue column, the recommended budget for next year, we have it compared to a couple of different things. The first is actuals from fiscal year 21-22, which ended last June 30. The budget for this year, fiscal year end 23. Our current projection for fiscal year end 23, because of course a few things have changed since we adopted this year's budget. Then the recommended budget, and then in the last column, the change for each line item between what we're projecting for this year and what we're budgeting for next year. So the only thing that looks a little bit unusual here as compared with previous years is the size of the increase in disability expenses for next year. And that is because we are anticipating that we will have to add a couple of folks to long-term disability, which we have not had to do in many years. So that's where that is coming from. A couple of other small things. Property tax growth, you'll notice if you look at that top line under resources, is actually slower than total requirement growth, which you can see running along the bottom. You can look at total resources, or you can look at benefit and admin expenses, which at first blush doesn't make sense because we fund all of our expenses with our property tax levy. But the reason for that is that we still are sitting on some excess fund balance, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I'm still trying to spend that money down and give that money back to the taxpayers. You'll also see that miscellaneous revenue is growing a lot in percentage terms, but not in dollar terms. I think I'll pre-answer a question if I tell you that's interest income, and interest rates are obviously going up. And, you know, our overall, you know, sort of growth rate for pension expenses, which you will see in the FPDR 1 and 2 pension line under requirements, which is the 4.4%, is a little bit slower than what we normally see during this time when we're phasing in, when we're still ramping up the size of our pension population as our FPDR 2s retire and phase in to replace FPDR 1s who have a less generous pension benefit. So that's a little bit slower growth than normal, and I'll talk about that a little more as well. Next slide. More numbers. This is horrible. I don't know why I put so many numbers on this. You know, numbers people love it. But this just shows you the entire 5-year forecast. So I've just added on, you know, what we think is going to happen going out through fiscal year end 28, and then also the growth rate from the current year projection to the fiscal year 28 budget. So if you look at that, at just, you know, the last line on the very, very bottom there with 3.4%, 8.9%, 8%, I mean, really what you're seeing in a nutshell there is inflation plus growth in pension expenses as we continue to phase in the pre-funded plan while we still have growth in the pay-as-you-go plan. So pension expenses are going to grow a lot as we continue that phase in, and that's why taxes also are going to grow a lot as we continue that phase in. Next slide. So that's just the big picture. I'm putting all the numbers in front of you. There are obviously a lot of details behind those items. It's, you know, hundreds of lines long, but if you want to see detail behind any item, let me know. But I am going to kind of walk through our expenses, and then I will talk about property taxes, and then I'll talk about significant risks to the 5-year forecast and how we manage those risks. So I know it's a little backward to start with expenses, but because almost all of our expenses are required by city charter, for us it makes sense to talk about how much money we need, and then we'll talk about how we're going to raise those funds. So this pie chart that we'll start out with shows all of our expenses and the percent of each sort of item as part of the pie. Of course, this pie gets, you can't see this, but it gets bigger every year because our expenses increase every year. But the division of the pie, it is changing, but it's changing really slowly. But FPDR 3 PERS contributions are growing as a proportion of the pie, which was exactly what you would expect. Disability, administrative, and fund management expenses are declining slightly as pieces of the pie. Not because they're not growing, but because they're growing a lot less than pension costs. But the other thing you can see at a glance here by looking at the pie is that almost 90% of our fund expenses are pension related, either for the PERS contributions, for our pre-funded folks, or the direct pay-as-you-go payments for our FPDR 1 and 2 folks. Oh, the presentation is gone. Oh, no, that's okay.
If you can just, I've handed out paper copies
Okay.
to people here, so if you can read off what page number you're on.
Okay. So I am on slide 5 now. Is everybody there? It's a table that says major assumptions for expenditures. Okay, sorry folks at home. I guess we're working on bringing that up. Again, I say this every year, but budgets and forecasts are really just collections of assumptions applied to numbers. So again, I hate to give you a big chart with a lot of numbers in it, but I want to make sure that I'm sharing all of the key assumptions that we then go in and apply. There's a lot of complex models that these go into, but these are the assumptions that I think are the most important for the board to just look at and know where this number is fundamentally coming from at the end of the day. So the top table is a collection of inflation assumptions that we primarily get from the city economist. The bottom table are the key assumptions that we develop in-house. And I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will call out a few things. First is wage growth, which is the first line running across the top. We had a large 5% cost of living adjustment for our sworn staff, all city staff last year, and we expect that again. That will occur this July 1st again. And then we see a return to kind of more normal inflation. As you heard the actuaries talking about, is that really going to happen? The actuaries think so, the city economists think so, so I hope so. And I guess that's where we'll leave that, but that is the assumption. The OPSRP public safety rate, so this is down, it's kind of in the middle of that first box, you'll see it running across. This is the PERS contribution rate we make on our FPDR 3s, and it goes up every 2 years as PERS works on paying down their unfunded liability. So it will go up next year from, oh good, the slide's back, it's a little bit bigger, from 31.72% to next year it'll go up to 33.91%. In the out years, those are projections from the city economist with some PERS input from the PERS actuaries. If we look at retirements, which are down in the bottom box, kind of this, the first line, you can see that we expect next year to be the biggest year in the forecast, fiscal year end 24, because we have 2 27 pay date months next year, one in December and one in June. On deaths, very interesting and sad topic, but deaths, which is the second line, you can see that in 21-22 we had a lot of deaths, 70. We normally are running about between 50 and 60. And we had 70 in the year before, so it's the second year of high mortality, which doesn't sound like a lot of numbers, but in a percentage sense, it's a large impact. So we do have deaths not returning completely to normal, but declining, significant, kind of going back to normal over the rest of the not going back to normal, but being reduced from their high point over the rest of the forecast. And the last thing I want to point out on this slide is that we have some very aggressive hiring in there for fire and police, much more than they have ever done in the past. Not as much as they wanted me to put in. I'll talk about that some more. Be assured that both bureaus are committed to hiring like crazy. But I also have to think about the taxpayers and how much money anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit as we move along here. So we can go next slide, Julie. All right, so I'm just going to spend these next 4 slides talking through the major categories of our expenses. And the first one, which is this is 70% of our budget currently, is FPDR 1 and 2 direct pay pension benefits. So this is really, about 2 things. One is economics and one is demographics. On the economics point, we have that big 5% wage COLA that we expect to see again on July 1st, 2023. That is in this high inflation situation, that's going to increase our FPDR 1 costs because they get COLAs equal to the pay increases of active employees. And it's going to make new FPDR 2 retirees even more expensive in relation to the FPDR 1 retirees they are replacing in the pension pool. But demographically, as I just mentioned, the retirees continue to have a higher death rate than usual. And then we have also experienced, as we expected, over the last 18 months, a dip in retirements between the big retirement numbers we had in 2021, and then we do expect another, not as big, but still large retirement year next year. So the higher mortality and the dip in retirements means that our pension population really hasn't changed very much. It's remained essentially level, which is not normal, which is why we see not a lot of growth, not as much as we would normally expect to see at that 4.4%. We only had 23 service retirements last year, and we've only had 43 service retirements so far this year, mostly in July, because July of 2022 was a 27 pay date month. We do expect some more this year. And then, as you saw on the earlier slide, we're looking at something closer to 75 for next year. If we just apply actuarial modeling, we would predict 58 service retirements next year, but of course we know that the 27 pay date months that folks flock into those. So we've moved some of that actuarial modeling into next year and assume some people will delay and wait for that 27 payday month, and some folks will go early and grab that 27 payday month. Moving on to the next slide, where we talk about our second biggest expense, which is PERS contributions. It's about 20% of our budget now, and by far the fastest growing part of our budget, as it should be, because this is essentially where we're phasing in that pre-funded component. And, you know, FPDR, we are merely the funding source for those contributions. You know, we don't, PERS benefits are not part of our plan in any way, and we don't have any role in administering PERS benefits, but our fund and that tax levy are the source for those contributions, so that the general fund is not, obviously. So what drives this budget is the number of FPDR 3 members, their pay levels, and PERS rates. And as you have heard from the actuaries today, the pay increases have been a little more dramatic than we were expecting. So, you know, and we continue to see more of that, and as we have a 5% COLA. The Portland Police Association also got a 2% essentially across the board salary increase as part of their contract last time. So we've had some salary growth that was beyond what we were expecting a couple of years ago. PERS rates go up every 2 years, as I mentioned, but that was definitely predicted. The number of FPDR 3 members is not growing as quickly as we expected last year. Fire has hired more than usual, as they planned, but police has had really less success in bringing in all the new hires they wanted until about 6 months ago, when they started to be able to bring in more officers. So when you put all those things together, you know, we've had some things that were more expensive and some things that were less expensive, but at the end of the day, growth has not been quite as high as we would have expected in PERS contributions, and that's mostly because of hiring. You know, we assumed that police would be able to hire a lot more folks than they've actually been able to hire. But this forecast going forward does assume that we're going to hire 546 new sworn hires over the next 5 years, which is kind of a mind-boggling number. And that would increase the number of PERS-covered employees by about 1/3, and then make them about 80% of the active sworn workforce at the end of those 5 years. So Trustee McClowry and Trustee Culp will be part of a dwindling group. Moving on to disability benefits. Disability and funeral benefits are about 3% of our budget. So they are small financially, but I always like to emphasize that, you know, this plus retirement workshops and pension estimates are the primary way that the active membership, you know, interacts with FPDR during their working lives. And there are some interesting things going on in disability benefits that you've already heard a lot about over the last year. But this chart breaks the disability benefits into all their different categories. I threw on a couple of extra years of actuals here as compared with the other slides because it is so interesting as it relates to COVID. You can see, you know, the orange line, which is short-term disability costs, which is where nearly all of our COVID expenses for disability are. You can see that it really jumped up in fiscal year end 21. It went up almost 40%, and that is mostly COVID impact. The number of claims increased even more than that. The number of claims increased more than 60%, actually. You know, there were over 1,100 disability claims in fiscal year end 21 and fiscal year end 22. And I just, you know, thought, I'm going to go look, like, how many active sworn employees did we have during that time? We had 1,700 active sworn employees during that 2-year span, you know, including folks who started and retired and all those things, and we had 1,100 claims. That's a very big uptick in disability claim volume. But you've all heard Kim talk about that. But you can really see that impact in the orange line. I want to mention the yellow line, which is medical costs, and we did talk about this last year, but it kind of did the opposite thing. And it really dipped, especially in fiscal year end 2022. And that is the impact of hospitals and everyone delaying a lot of medical care during the COVID crisis. And, you know, members weren't able to get their surgeries on time and all of those things. Because the COVID claims have not been terribly expensive on the medical front, fortunately. And then finally, I just wanted to note on the blue line, which I think has triangles, right? Yes. That's that small increase in long-term disability costs that I mentioned earlier, where you can see we're coming down from kind of this low point in the current year and then going up in fiscal year 24, because we anticipate having to just, unfortunately, we have a few people who are not going to be able to go back to work. And that is kind of an overview of disability costs, both in the past and going forward. Moving on, this slide talks about administrative costs. This is one of the few areas of our budget that has at least some discretionary components. It's about 2% of our budget. I have growth of about 4.8% from the current year, which is maybe less than you would expect, considering that personnel services are 63% of our administrative costs, and overall personal services are going up 9%. We have that 5% cost of living adjustment. We built into the budget, and this is all, direction from City Council on this piece, but built in the budget for 2 to 3% merit raises for most, but not all, staff, plus health benefit increases of about 3.5%. So when we put all that together, we get about 9% growth in the personnel budget. And some of that increase is also the addition of the new disability analyst position that you all added earlier this year, where we just have half a year of costs for that position this year, but we'll have a full year of costs for that position next year. Costs for external materials and services, vendors and services, so this is everybody that we buy stuff from outside of the city. There are lots of examples, but the largest are professional services for disability, for the disability program, and the office lease are the two biggest things in there. And we have those going up as well. Internal materials and service also has lots of items. This is everything we buy from within the city. The two largest items in there are the city attorney's office and the Bureau for Technology Services, where in internal materials and services, our administrative spending is actually going down more than 10% for next year as compared with this year, but that is just because of the one-time spending on our office move for this year, which resulted in some one-time costs with facilities and BTS, because all the equipment had to be moved and reconnected and all of those things. But I did want to pause and talk about the move for a minute, because you can't see this in the slide, but we downsized our space from about 8,000 square feet to about 5,000 square feet. Is that about right, Sam? And that cut our lease costs by about $50,000 annually going forward. And that was made possible by the fact that some folks are going to work from home some of the time, and we don't need as much space. So we've made that ongoing reduction, and then on top of that, Sam was able to negotiate a 5-month rent abatement in the current year. So our rental expenses are much less this year. Otherwise, the growth rate would be a little more exciting, but with very low costs this year. And that is really all I have to say at this kind of high level about expenses. Before I talk a little bit about revenue, are there questions? Okay, I'll keep on moving. This is really straightforward, since we really only have one real revenue. I mean, we do have other revenues, but they're dwarfed in comparison to property taxes. And when you think about the fact that that orange slice of the pie, beginning fund balance, is really just leftover property taxes, only about 1% of our revenues are coming from non-property tax sources. So let me talk about beginning fund balance on this slide for just a minute. So last year at this time, I expected to start the current year that we're in with about $25.3 million in fund balance, and we actually wound up with $30 million in fund balance. And that was for two reasons. The first was that taxes came in $3.2 million higher than expected, which is a good thing. Delinquencies surprised me, so I surprised everybody. Delinquencies were historically low when we had predicted the opposite, that delinquencies would be higher during the pandemic. So everybody, not just us, but everybody out there got more in tax revenue than they expected to last year. And then we also spent about $1 million less on disability than we feared, because it turns out the worst of last year's COVID wave was kind of dying down just as we were adopting the budget, but we didn't know that that was going to happen at that time. So we are spending down about $5 million of that balance this year, and then I want to spend down another $5 million of that next year. My target for fund balance is $14 million to $20 million, kind of depending on conditions. What's holding us back a little bit is this police hiring. You know, they haven't been able to hire enough. We need the money if they can hire, but then if they can't hire, then we're sitting on more money than I want to be sitting on. So that's why that's a little bit of a dance with the police bureau around fund balance. So let me move on and just say a few more words about property taxes. So we need 6.1% more in tax revenue next year, which, as I mentioned before, is less than our expenditure growth because we're going to spend down at least $5 million of that fund balance, and we don't need to hit the taxpayers up for that piece. And I did just want to point out that, you know, we're asking for $193.7 million in tax revenue next year, which is more than this year, but it's still less than what we asked for 2 years ago. And that's probably all I would say about that slide. I'm not reading the slides to you. I can if you want me to, but you can read them. So let's talk about the impact on tax rates, though. So the box up there at the top are various assumptions that come from the city economist about how much he expects real market value to grow, how much he expects assessed value to grow, what he expects to happen with compression losses and discount and delinquency losses. You can see that low number, minus 3.7% in fiscal year in 22, which, you know, we kind of average 4 to 4.5% in delinquencies. So that is the surprising number that I mentioned before. Underneath that is where we take those numbers and, you know, apply them into figuring out, okay, well, how much then do we have to actually levy? And that's the current year taxes required amount to make up for compression and discount and delinquency losses that are estimated at this point. And then we apply that to RMV and AV, which are, you know, based on the assumptions that the city economist has made about how those will grow, and turn those into a rate. And then that chart down at the bottom graphically illustrates that rate. So I think everybody on the board knows this, but we care about the RMV rate because that's what the cap in city charter is based on. We care about the AV rate because that's what property tax bills are actually based on. So I do want to point out that 0% real market value growth that Scott from Milliman already mentioned in fiscal year in 24. So I had a long conversation with the city economist about, like, are you sure? Are you really sure? How sure are you? That's a very, you know, low number, and there was a similar assumption in the past, but he does feel quite strongly that the commercial office property values are not, that we're still bleeding in the impacts of the pandemic, and that those values are going to continue to decline across the city. He's also very concerned about declining housing market prices as interest rates go up. So he does not want to build in any real market value growth for next year, and then very slow growth for the year after that. But for assessed value, you can see we're kind of going gangbusters on that with much higher growth. You know, under normal conditions, remember, like if nothing else happens, it can only grow 3%. But if you're building new things and doing new things, it can grow more. So there's always the assumption for existing construction and new construction. But on top of that, the city is going to bring some urban renewal areas back into the general tax base. And that you can really see with that 9% growth in fiscal year end 25. So that's good for the AV rate because even as our expenses go up, we will be able to spread our taxes over a bigger base of assessed value taxpayers going forward. And so that's also why the RMV rate is growing faster than the AV rate, because the city economist is not predicting any increase in RMV at all next year, and just that slow growth the next year, but big increase in the AV rate. So the AV rate is growing, but not very much. The RMV rate is growing a little bit more. Before I talk about risks, which is the last thing I want to talk to the board about, I didn't say anything about other revenues, and I don't want to give them totally short shrift since they're only about 1% of the budget, but they are primarily interest income overhead charges at the police bureau when they do third-party contract work for other folks. And we get part of the overhead charges, other organizations, and subrogation revenue on disability claims when other third parties are at fault in accidents that our sworn folks experience. And that is everything I have to say about property taxes. I'll pause for questions. And last couple slides is talk about risk, which is of course very important. And there's, you know, just to offset things, now I have a bunch of words on these slides, a bunch of numbers, a bunch of words. So this is to talk through what are the things that might cause us to exceed this recommended budget, and how should we plan for that risk. And it feels like so refreshing to be in kind of a normal or almost normal, what feels normal compared to the last 2 years, risk environment where we still have plenty of risks out there and plenty of things that can go wrong, but there are more known risks with less volatility as I think we move more into this new normal. So the first risk to put out there is that we do have 227 pay dates next year in fiscal year end 24. And that's happened 3 times before. And the first year there were 64 retirements, and the second year there were 64 retirements, which is kind of a funny coincidence. But then that third year there were 99. But that third year was fiscal year end 20, when there were so many other factors, the pandemic and overtime related to protests and wildfires and all of these things that I think were also incentivizing retirements across the public safety workforce. So we've budgeted at 73, which is more than you would predict based on actuarial assumptions, but less than that 99, but more than that 64. You know, but it's still a risk, particularly if a lot of folks retire in December. You know, then we will have higher pension expenses because we'll experience those for half of the year. If a lot of folks retire in June, that's okay, because those will be part of the following year's expenses. Hiring, I mentioned this. It's always a risk. You know, the more folks that we hire, the more we have to pay in PERS contribution costs. Hiring forecasts are tricky, and they have to be negotiated with the police and fire bureaus because we need to match up with them in the budget process. I have never in all my time at the city, including even before I came here, experienced a year where police didn't plan to hire, you know, very, very aggressively. And I also can't recall a year where we didn't have enough budget to fund that hiring. I think, you know, aspirations generally outrun what can actually be delivered at police. That said, they are in the biggest push I've ever seen them in to hire a lot more folks. This is more unusual this year, is that fire also wants to hire very aggressively, and Trustee McClary may have some insight into this, but fire typically runs 2 12-person academies a year. They can run 3, they've done it before. But they are hoping to run 4 if they can get enough budget authority for that over the next couple of years and really staff up more. So I think there's actually more risk that fire will be successful because they always have very large applicant pools. That said, they have some logistical challenges around running that many training academies through because they do. Trustee McClary, you guys don't send folks to an outside training. You do all of your training in-house, right? Yes. So a little bit more of a challenge. So the bottom line is that I budgeted for most but not all of the hopeful hiring. Police thinks they're going to hire 45 more folks than I budgeted for, and fire thinks they're going to hire 13 more folks than I've budgeted for. What I tried to do was stay at the high end of realistic rather than all the way out at aspirational, because again, balancing not wanting to have a bunch of fund balance that we don't need. I don't want to take that from the taxpayers earlier than we need it. So it is a risk that they could actually go hire all of these folks as they plan, and then we will have more expenses than I've budgeted for. Last thing on this slide is the Portland Firefighter Association contract. We almost always have an open contract. Like half the years there's an open contract. This year it's the PFA contract, which will expire on June 30th. We always budget for the current contract terms to continue, but anything can happen. So we've budgeted for just cost of living adjustments at 5% on July 1st for them, and then at inflation in the out years. So if there are salary increases beyond what we've budgeted for, across the board salary increases is mostly what I'm talking about. If there were bonuses, as there were in the police contract last time, Trustee McClary looks at me like I'm crazy. Or scheduled, he's like, in my dreams, right? No, I don't know. The negotiations, we'll know more as we go along. And any reductions in the scheduled hours that firefighters work, which have to result in either more overtime or more hiring, would also increase costs. So next slide is the last risk that I want to mention, of course, because it's probably just going to be part of our lives for forever from now on, is talk about COVID, which is, at least this year, continuing to cause these occasional spikes in our short-term disability costs. And continuing to cause little spikes in sworn overtime, because of course when a public safety employee is infected or has to quarantine, and the quarantine requirements, I should mention, at fire are more stringent because of the cohabitation situation that you have in a firehouse, then somebody has to pay for them to be off work. That somebody's us. And then also there needs to be overtime as folks come in to backfill those folks. And to the extent that those are folks on FPDR, there are FPDR 3 members, that increases our PERS contribution costs. So the main way in which COVID impacts us financially is with disability costs and with overtime. So what we are doing now is assuming that we are going to continue to have COVID costs at some level, but we're budgeting them for about 50% below our peak in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. I'm sorry, fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. So that seems to be the direction things are going, where we're not going to get back, at least not soon, to pre-pandemic levels, but that we are not remaining at the peak either. So that is what we are doing with those. Now, if there's some new variant that takes us back, to the peaks that we were experiencing before, then we didn't budget for that. There is also, some impact on property taxes here, which plays into the rate that we talked about, because that has kind of a longer tail, and we're still waiting for all of that to shake out as it relates to not COVID itself, but I guess lifestyle changes related to COVID, like the commercial office property values that we were talking about. And, there's upheaval in the interest rate market because of inflation, which could impact housing prices. So how do we manage risk? First, we try to budget on the high end of realistic. But again, I'm always aware of wanting to balance what we're asking the taxpayers to fund with what we're going to need. Second, sometimes we will cushion a high-risk budget individually. If we know a particular line item has more risk, like disability, for example, we'll add a little cushion there. But mostly we try to make sure that we have enough cash on hand in the form of fund contingency to manage fallout for whatever might go seriously awry. You will see that most operating funds have 10% contingency, and we have not felt that that's necessary at FPDR. Since 70% of our expenses are monthly pension benefits, those are fairly predictable. So our standard rate has always been about 7%. We went up to 9% during the pandemic when there were just, risks coming at us from everywhere and a lot of unknowns where we couldn't even get our arms around the size of, the volatility. But for this year, as I did for last year, I'm going to recommend that we drop back to our usual 7%, which would be $14 million. And that is enough to kind of cover everything that I mentioned there on the slide. We've gone through and kind of monetized those things. It's enough to cover, 20 unbudgeted retirements, additional 3% increases in PFFA contract, all those things, and still leave us with $8 million extra for anything crazy that came up. So, once we've done that math, I feel really comfortable about going back to our usual 7%. And I do want to remind the board that in a worst case scenario, it's not that, and anyone who's listening, it's not that we wouldn't be able to pay our expenses. We would borrow money either from another fund at the city. We would have to pay interest, obviously, or we would borrow money on the capital markets. We would obviously have to pay interest, but as well. So, last slide. The shore is in sight. As always, I just like to leave you guys with some overarching budget points, like things that have either, come up several times today or been a thread kind of running through the whole discussion. So first is just to remind you of something I'm sure you're all painfully aware of, that we are living through the highest period of inflation in 40 years. It impacts almost everything in our budget. It impacts benefits. It impacts administrative costs. When will it end? Nobody knows, but it has been slowly improving for the last 6 months as the Fed tries to bring us in for this gentle landing instead of a crash landing. But of course, nobody knows how that will end. But inflation is driving everything up everywhere, and we continue to hope and believe that that will temper over the next year or two. Second, as we just discussed, COVID costs seem to be settling down and becoming more predictable. We're no longer in that anything can happen environment and more into a place where we feel like we have some sense of how much higher costs will be because of COVID. But as you've seen, those COVID impacts ripple through all kinds of little corners of our budget that you might not think of at first glance, like the overtime. And then the third thing that we've talked about is that we have this continued excess fund balance that I would like to spend down, and that the slower sworn hiring than we expected at the police bureau, those two things are really softening how much we need to increase taxes next year. We've been very lucky during the pandemic, and I hope budgeted very carefully, in that we did have to draw on fund contingency, but not as much as I feared, but we did have to draw on it, but not as much as we thought. And that, in combination with those slower PERS contributions, has really allowed us to build up some fund balance that we need to kick back to the taxpayers now. And that is it from me. So first, any more questions? Total silence. All right, it's good to go last.
Maybe I have one quick question. I noticed that you took into consideration the impact of COVID. So I'm assuming that the flu or other respiratory viruses didn't have a material impact this year, right?
Well, that is a very interesting question that I actually don't know the answer to. Kim, are you on the call?
I am.
Yeah, can you speak to that?
Yeah, and yes, I can. And yeah, the flu hasn't had much impact. Typically, what we will see during this time of year, James, is an increase in maybe pneumonia type claims, but we haven't seen that yet. So far, COVID is the thing, and so yeah, the flu and that hasn't had any impact. It's all been COVID related, COVID identified type illnesses.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, concerns? Is there anything that the board would like changed? Any item that the board would like to see more detail on? No? Okay, looks like we're good. Before you guys talk about motions to adopt the budget, which you do need to do since you are the legal authority to adopt the budget, I always want to just say that we may have to make small technical changes. You might remember this from last year. To sync up with the police and fire bureaus and other internal service funds as the mayor and council make their decisions. But I will let you know about I'll bring anything that is programmatically or financially significant back to the board. But it's more often a case of we have to add $150 to this thing and, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I thought that was really well done. One thing that just jumped out at me when you were talking that kind of correlated back to our earlier conversation, but I don't really want to reopen that door. But the PERS contribution rates, while stable this year and the next couple of years, jump up by about 5%, or they're projected to increase by about 5% for fiscal year end 26, and another 5% for fiscal year end 28. So, kind of rolling back to the other conversation and pressure on current taxpayers to pay for things, these PERS contributions increasing at these rates, that means in the next 5 years, we're looking at pension contributions going up about 10% of payroll for the FPDR 3 people. So that would be any other changes for FPDR 1 and 2 funding would be on top of those increases.
So that is an excellent point, Trustee McLeod. And I used to say a couple of years ago when we started seeing these really dramatic increases in the PERS contribution rates, everyone knew that the phase-in in 2006 was going to cost more money. Of course it was. We're going to fund 2 generations of pensioners at the same time. But nobody, I think, fully anticipated the degree to which PERS contribution rates were going to go up. So that has made the impact to this generation of taxpayers even more significant, than anticipated.
Okay, that was very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, can I have a motion to accept this budget as presented to us?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the budget signify aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes.
All right, thank you all. I think the next item is the summary of expenditures for the board, and you have all already heard enough from me for one day, and there's nothing all that significant on there to point out to you, but does anyone have any questions?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
No.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in here real quick because there's just a couple of last few things in here. Legislative updates, I'm going to push that off to March. The legislature just started last week. All I can tell you is I've reviewed about 2,000 bills to determine how many are going to impact FPDR, and it's pretty amazing. It's awful light this year, maybe 8 so far. Expect another 500 more. Again, 2/3 of these bills won't see the light of, or won't make it to the end, and so I'll keep you appraised of the significant ones as we go forward. So a little more detail in March. Another thing on FPDR updates is I think you've heard a lot that the charter change that was approved by the citizens of Portland and its impact on FPDR. I've been involved with that, reading every line of all the changes in it, and frankly, it's got this much, just a very small impact to FPDR, and almost all of that directly impacts me as the director. Changes who can hire and fire me, from the mayor and city council to city manager. The hiring process goes, city manager will make the decision who to hire. It will be vetted with the board, then the city council has to approve. So that's the new path. It's essentially the same, but the mayor's not in it. And in order to terminate me, you all have to be brought into the discussion. I don't think you have any authority to say yes or no, but it has to be vetted through the board. That won't change. It just will come from the new city manager. But the rest of it still stays the same. All your responsibilities, all the plan design, everything was left intact. Also, at the election, Renee Gonzalez was brought in to replace Joanne Hardesty. He is the commissioner in charge of bureaus, the Fire Bureau, Bureau of Emergency Management, and the 911 Communication Center, as well as FPDR. So again, he just sees some of the administrative stuff. You all, as the board, still do the policy, the direction, the plan oversight, the rules, the budget. That doesn't change with him coming on board. And again, most of that responsibility is me, how I interact with him. I'm small potatoes given what he's got here and the big issues going on with some of the other bureaus. I have not met with him, and I probably won't meet with him for another month or two, which is pretty standard for my commissioner in charge. Their idea is you go out and do what you need to do and don't bring it up unless you need any help. So that's good. So that's where we are with the charter change, the new commissioner. Stacy mentioned the disability analyst. It was posted last week. We'll close next week. We're a few weeks behind, but again, getting in through some of the hiring bureaucracy gets pretty crazy at the city these days. And then Kim will head up an interview team, and we're hoping, keep our fingers crossed here, probably in a month or so, we'll have a decision made and maybe even have the person on board with that. Future meeting agenda. So the next one is was it March 24th, I believe? 21st. March 21st, okay, thank you. So March 21st, it will be another hybrid meeting just like this. We will discuss the annual benefit adjustment, or the COLA, next week. Will be the first of possibly 2 discussions. And we'll do, as I mentioned earlier, the presentation of the ETOP test, and if I can get the independent actuary here, or PERS here, that would be good, so they can explain what the process is and any question you want to have answered about that. That's pretty much all I have. Tried to push that through fast. I'd like to, thank, we had, Julie Hall trying to get this all organized here. We have our one person still here. We had a team of 5 or 6 people at the beginning here trying to get this set up electronically for us. I wanted to thank all of them. Also wanted to thank Lisa Knight, Del Stevens, he's still here, and Kevin Machis for coming in and presenting. It's unique that we've had 3 people pre-request to meet, so we gave them the opportunity to do that. And so thank you all very much. Catherine, I think we're done.
All right, thank you everybody for your attention and focus on a long meeting. I think it was good and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
take care.
Sam? Sorry, I'm trying to get in real quick. Can you let us know ahead of time whether you're able to get independent actuaries and or PERS? That request from Margaret was actually from me.
Yeah, she said that.
I would like very much to have someone from IA here, if possible. I would like very much to have someone like Steve Dees